All right, I call this meeting to order at 7 p.m. on Tuesday, March 19th. As you're able, please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everyone, for being here tonight. We had a board retreat recently, and we're trying a couple of new things. One of those is doing the working sessions here in the main chamber. So we'll see how that goes tonight. So we'll start off by adopting our agenda. Then we need to approve electronic meeting participation for Dr. Derek Roundtree. Board, do I have a motion to amend the agenda to add a student matter to closed session as authorized by Virginia Code Section 2.2-3711-2?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Ms. Franklin and a second by Ms. Bond. Any discussion? Ms. Osborne, please call the roll.
Ms. Bond?
Yes.
Ms. Franklin?
Yes.
Dr. Guidry?
Yes.
Ms. Parton?
Yes.
Ms. Purcell?
Yes.
Dr. Roundtree?
Not
Yes.
doubted yet.
Not on it. Mr. Hudson?
Yes.
6 in favor, 1 not present.
Motion carries. So do I have a motion to adopt the amended agenda?
Second.
Motion by Ms. Franklin, second by Ms. Bond. Any other discussion? Ms. Osborne, please call the roll.
Ms. Bond?
Yes.
Ms. Franklin?
Yes.
Dr. Guidry?
Yes.
Ms. Parton? Ms. Purcell?
Yes.
Mr. Hudson?
Yes.
6 in favor.
Motion carries. Now do I have a motion to approve electronic meeting participation for Dr. Derek Roundtree as he is out of town?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Ms. Franklin and a second by Ms. Purcell. Any discussion? Ms. Osborne, please call the roll.
Ms. Bond?
Yes.
Ms. Franklin?
Yes.
Dr. Guidry?
Yes.
Ms. Parton? Ms. Purcell?
Yes.
Mr. Hudson?
Yes.
6 in favor.
Motion carries. Wait until we can get Derek on before we move forward. Okay. Dr. Roundtree, can you hear us?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Hot dog. Yes, we can. All right. All right. So next up, our student representatives are Alexandra Jobs from Auburn High School and Li Shu Wang from Blacksburg High School. Will you please read our mission and belief statements?
MCPS is an innovative educational community. We value diversity and we are committed to equity and inclusion.
MCPS empowers learners to realize success in an ever-changing global society through collaboration with communities, families, staff, and students. MCPS provides a safe, engaging learning environment and intentional exposure to positive social, emotional, and academic experiences.
All students can learn in order to pursue their dreams. Schools are safe places of joy, wonder, and creativity. Every person deserves to be loved, valued, and respected. Kindness is an essential skill of a responsible, productive community member. The diversity of our community is one of our greatest strengths.
All people deserve equitable access to opportunities and resources. Every child deserves an advocate. Honoring the voices of students and other stakeholders strengthens the school community. Open communication and feedback are vital to our growth. Learning and teaching are collective efforts that begin at birth and involve the entire community. Relationship building and high expectations are foundational to student success.
Okay, great. Thank you both. Our next item of business is the student representative reports. Alexandra, do you have a report from Auburn High School?
I do. Okay. First, our Scholastic Bowl team competed in a tournament at Virginia Tech on Saturday, March 16th. One of the 40 students competing was Evan Skinner, who placed 9th overall in points scored. The AHS Chamber Choir competed in earned the top rating, Superior, at the District Choral Assessment on Saturday, March 16th. Not only did these students receive a superior rating for their stage performance, but also received a superior rating for their sight reading assessment. Last year was our first experience attending this choral assessment, where we received an excellent rating. This year, these students surpassed their own record to receive the highest awards rating possible. Along with that news, Alice in Wonderland is the AHS spring musical to be held on the weekend of April 27th. Sports-wise, the AHS boys varsity basketball team finished state runners-up in Richmond. The team had a terrific season and ended the year by breaking several school records held at Auburn for many years. The senior of this month, Nick Millines, reached 1,000 points this season, and Bryce Gill broke his own record for blocked shots. And now spring sports are in full swing at AHS. This year, AHS has varsity softball, JV and varsity baseball, boys and girls soccer, and girls tennis, and outdoor track and field. Our AHS seniors attended a national track event this past weekend in Virginia Beach. All seniors enjoyed the trip and competed with other athletes from around the country. And finally, the Reiner FFA hosted an annual farmers breakfast this morning at AHS with over 40 farmers in attendance. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Lishu, do you have a report from Blacksburg High School?
Sure do. It's a little bit shorter this time. Since our last recount, a mere 2 weeks back, Blacksburg High School has continued to strive for excellence. Our spring sports are doing quite well. The BHS lacrosse teams all triumphed over William Byrd High School on March 14th. The BHS boys varsity tennis team defeated two other high school teams at their match in Radford on March 15th, scoring 9-0 against each team that they defeated. Our student musicians have been performing with excellence as well, with the symphonic band and all three choirs scoring a superior rating in their respective assessments. And finally, our academic competitors. This past weekend, Virginia Tech hosted a regional invitational tournament for Scholastic Bowl teams, and 10 Scholastic Bowl teams attended it. Blacksburg's main team came up on top, winning first place. And all 5 of our MAC teams made it to the finals at Super MAC on March 7th, and the Math and Science MAC teams each won Super MAC champions. That will be it for my final student report. Thank you for listening. Wait, this is also my last meeting, so I have something to say to the board, actually. Okay. Members of the board, Dr. Brigham, I should probably sit down for this. Okay. Can't reach the mic. And Miss Osborne, hello. I wanted to take a moment to express my appreciation for the opportunity I've had this year to serve alongside you on the MCPS school board. What I learned from this experience was extensive. For the first time, I had the chance to work alongside some of the local community's most significant policymakers. I was able to examine the process of management needed to maintain the education system of a county as large and diverse as Montgomery. I got to truly understand the effort that goes into overseeing all the resources that have been put into the school system. In short, I was able to involve myself in the discussions of the education system that I've been a part of daily, and that experience was life-changing for me. In addition to having a front seat in seeing how resources are managed, I was also able to see the interactions between the different people with this access to resource management. Each meeting, I'd be surrounded by all of you, a host of well-rounded individuals with each their own perspectives on important issues. I would hear you talk to each other, always in a respectful fashion, even through disagreements. Witnessing the variety of opinions going into important decisions was an enlightening experience for me. I also happened to be serving as a representative the year that a number of board positions were up for re-election in November. Thus, I had the side duty of being highly aware of the candidates and tracking the votes, as whoever got voted to the board would be who I'd be working with in January. This exposed me to the self-education process that should at least precede voting, and I have no doubts that I'll draw from this process when I vote for US President in November. Watching it all was great, yes, but I also enjoyed sharing my opinion in things sometimes. I'd always feel welcome to speak whenever I needed to, and I highly appreciate that. The primary reason I elected to be part of this board to begin with was so that I could represent my peers at Blacksburg High School before this county. And I've gotten to do that quite successfully, I'd say, collecting the concerns of my fellow students, looking out for relevant issues during board meetings and even talking about the student feedback I received. Truly, I am grateful that I had the opportunity to engage in this form of civil duty. I do wish that I'd been able to see the concerns brought before the board be directly addressed, but I also understand that the process of bringing constituent issues to discussion can be lengthy and even span across years. I sincerely hope that what I have brought before the county does not go unaddressed, however. Thank you again for allowing me to serve alongside you in ensuring that MCPS is an environment where all can learn and grow happily.
Okay, thank you, Lishu.
Yeah. Okay.
I would like to say that I think I've said this a couple of times. When we first were talking about the idea of student reps, I was a little hesitant because I didn't know what to really expect. But it has been a joy with every student rep that we've had so far, and you two are also have been a joy and been just wonderful, giving us insight to the student perspective and what is happening in your buildings. So I can't thank you enough, and I hope you did learn something from us, right? But I appreciate you, and thank you for those words.
And I appreciate you taking time out of your much busy teenage years to come and sit and listen to sometimes I know can be a dragging out meeting. So thank you again. It has been a pleasure. We enjoy you.
Okay, great. It's been great having you, Lishu. Done a great job at representing Blacksburg High School, and it's been great hearing all the updates from you and the school. And I assume this isn't the last meeting for you, though, is it? Right? So.
I mean, technically it is, but...
Well, for Alexandria, I'm sorry.
Oh,
I hope it isn't.
Okay, that's right.
I hope to be here next
Not to
year.
your knowledge. Okay, very cool. Alrighty. Alrighty. Our next agenda item is public address. We welcome the opportunity to hear from students, parents, employees, and community members about education matters in this community. As a reminder, the board sets aside 30 minutes to start our public address. We have the option to extend in 30-minute increments, which Ms. Osborne will remind us of. If there are additional speakers after 90 minutes, the board will continue with their business meeting and hold one additional 30-minute session at the end of the business meeting. The clock continues through applause and disruptions. The more disruptions there are, the fewer speakers we get to address the board. I will call each speaker up by name in the order that they are signed up. Each speaker will have 3 minutes to address the board. The board does not respond to speakers during public address. The screens will show when the speaker has 30 seconds remaining and when time is up. Please state your name and the area of the county you live in. The first speaker is Kelly Elliott, followed by Martha Ann Stallings.
Hi, I am Kelly Elliott. I'm a mother. Sorry, I have a bit of allergies. I'm a mother to a 10-year-old son in 5th grade and a 7-year-old daughter in 1st grade. We moved to the New River Valley in 2019 from upstate New York. I work at Virginia Tech and have recently become a board member for the SEAC. My son went to Price's Fork School from kindergarten to 2nd grade, and both children are now at Bellevue Elementary. We live in Christiansburg right now. My son currently has an IEP for emotional disability. He's diagnosed with partial hearing loss, severe depression, social anxiety, ADHD, and autism spectrum. Due to being adopted from foster care, my son has Medicaid, which is a huge blessing for us to be able to afford services. I know that there are many people in my similar situation that don't have that resource. So my son's situation right now reflects the graph that were presented at the March 5th board meeting about discipline and special education students. He has an IEP and has had 10 days of suspension this year, which I think are manifestations of his disability. The suspensions ended yesterday, and then we were asked to wait another 2 weeks without him attending school, at least, so that a risk assessment can be done. And then however long it takes to get an IEP meeting to talk about what needs to happen next. Needless to say, this has been a burden on me and my son's father. We both work full-time. And it's detrimental for my son because he's not in school and not learning. Children in elementary school are too young to be left home alone during out-of-school suspension. But when they are old enough to stay home alone, that is when they have the option of in-school suspension. It's backwards. If elementary-age kids are given the support they need in elementary schools, then maybe there would be less kids in middle and high schools with the need. I joined the SEAC because as a parent of a child with emotional disability, I'm exhausted trying to advocate for him. And I don't want other parents to have to feel this way. Parents of children in special education that I know are all exhausted and are already doing the best they can with the resources they have. There's occupational therapy, counseling appointments, medication, and all of these things cost money and time, and often years to get the right dosages and right amount of therapy needed. Parents work to pay for these services, and by not having the option of in-school suspension, parents have to take off work, creating even more of a burden financially and otherwise. I am a good parent, and my son is a good child who deals with an emotional disability. We're already having a difficult time trying to figure out all of this outside of school and the other life things that happen. Although not the only thing that needs to be done with special education in this area, I do think in-school suspension in elementary schools is one thing that would go a long way and would benefit everyone involved. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Elliott. Next up is Martha Ann Stallings.
Good evening and thank you. I am Martha Ann Stallings from Blacksburg, and I want to address school board members, chairs, vice chair, awesome high school members, and Dr. Bragan. As you know, or many of you possibly know, I have chaired the Dialogue on Race Education Issue Group for the last 9 years. As a Dialogue on Race organization, and especially in the education group, we tried to stay informed of data and practices for all students in Montgomery County Public Schools. Specifically, our education goals include addressing academic and discipline disparities between Black and white students and the hiring of Black teachers and administrators. Please note, however, we care about all students. We just want equal treatment across student groups. What is happening in our schools is important to our whole community. Our recent collaboration with Dr. Bragan and ongoing work with the Office of Equity and Diversity is not only important, but appreciated. Dr. Bragan even joined us on a Monday morning at 9:30 when I know he had other things that he could do, but we had a small group session. He joined us that morning. Guyleen and Stacy have been very supportive in helping us think through the student issues that have been addressed or need to be addressed and what our involvement as a community group can be. Our winter summit in January addressed some student data concerns. We were able to pull data from the VDOE website, which was alarming in many respects, but not surprising. As we heard in the last board meeting, this is nothing new. I do try to watch and listen to your board meetings. They are very important snapshots into what this board and the school division values for our students. 2 weeks ago, I was pleased to hear that student discipline data is an important topic to discuss and of interest to everyone, it seems, in this room. Administrators, Dr. Bragan, and especially you as school board members seem to care. You asked the tough questions and you asked for more data to be shared so that people could better understand and analyze the student data and the gaps that exist. Thank you, board members, for the questions. Thank you, administrators, for caring. And thank you for a very quick 2-week turnaround of extensive student discipline data that I found on your docs. That's very impressive. So please look carefully, as you said you would, at the current practices alongside the trends that we are looking at. As was stated in the document that I found, determining next steps will be important in turning some of this alarming data around. Looking at current practices and improving student outcomes, is something that Dialogue on Race supports, and we thank you for moving forward.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Stallings. Seeing no others signed up for public address, public address is closed. Next up is our consent items. If no one wishes to move an item out of consent, we will consider these items approved. Okay. Next up are the financial reports. Do I have a motion to acknowledge receipt of the financial summary report?
So moved.
A motion by Dr. Guitry and a second by Ms. Franklin. Any discussion? Ms. Osborne, please call the roll.
Ms. Bond?
Yes.
Ms. Franklin?
Yes.
Dr. Guitry?
Yes.
Ms. Parton?
Yes.
Ms. Purcell?
Yes.
Dr. Roundtree?
Yes.
Mr. Hudson?
Yes.
7 in favor.
Motion carries. Do I have a motion to approve the payment of the bills as presented?
So moved.
Motion by Ms. Bond and second by Ms. Franklin. Any discussion? Ms. Osborne, please call the roll.
Ms. Bond?
Yes.
Ms. Franklin? Yes. Dr. Guitry?
Yes.
Ms. Parton?
Yes.
Ms. Purcell?
Yes.
Dr. Roundtree?
Yes.
Mr. Hudson?
Yes.
7 in favor.
Motion carries. All right, we are now into the business portion of our meeting, and we'll start with a report from the superintendent.
Thank you, Board Chair Hudson. I only have one thing to report on, and it's about an event that occurred last week. Christiansburg and Auburn Middle School students and staff members, along with Christiansburg Police Department, partnered with the New River Valley chapter of Sleep in Heavenly Peace to build 40 beds for children in need around the region. Approximately $10,000 was raised to make the project happen. Students, staff, parents, and policemen started with raw materials and pieces of wood, and within 5 hours turned them into 40 usable beds for families in need. In addition, the Christiansburg Police Department donated much of the bedding supplies, items similar to sheets, pillows, blankets, etc., and their officers helped run the heavy machinery to make this project come to fruition. I wanted to highlight this specifically because this accomplishment exemplifies what is so great about our county and the community we serve. It makes me proud to lead a school system in this division where people would donate their time for the betterment of others. And I think at times we get away from all that's good in our area, all that's good in our schools, and all those great things that make Montgomery County the place where we want to live and raise our children. So great job to everyone involved, and I thought I'd just take a few minutes to share that great event. Thank you, Board Chair.
All right, great, thank you. Next up, Christina Sheriff from ABM Building Services will share a presentation with us regarding their energy savings program. No action is expected tonight. This is just a presentation.
Thank you. Just advance from here. Thank you. Good evening, Board Chair, members of the board, Dr. Bragan. Thank you so much for having myself and Whitley Blake here to present in front of you and share with you details to an energy savings funded infrastructure improvement project for Montgomery County Public Schools. So what we're here to do tonight is just share with you some details to how the program works and how it's going to benefit Montgomery County Public Schools and the community. First, it starts with understanding the challenges and demands that each and every K through 12 Virginia school is facing financially, innovatively, through our classrooms, through our curriculum. We're faced with, obviously having to balance many, many things at any single point in time. What this program that we're going to share with you does is helps our K through 12 institutions create funding through innovative funding strategies, your existing budget, so that you can, with us, collaboratively build a project through our program that helps both the learning environment and a learning experience. The result of that program that we're providing to you, that collaborative process that we're going to share with you the details on, is giving you, through valuable information on real data of what you spend and what you consume in energy, as well as cost, dollars through the district and how you operate and run your current buildings. Using that data, we're going to help you build a program that, again, can address many of your facility needs, as well as enhance the educational experience for your students. It will directly address common challenges and demands that you face among the school board and within the leadership and many schools as well. In short, we're enhancing and addressing many of your facility needs with an innovative funding solution that enhances the educational experience. Today, the present day, what you're faced with is, and what everybody's faced with, is doing a lot more with a lot less. So in short, that's time and that's money. So what we're here to do is basically help you balance with every dollar you spend, you're faced with, do I spend it towards the buildings or do I spend it towards our education, our enrichment of our educational for our students? This program will help you enhance both with the same dollar. In short, that's meeting your critical facility needs, not increasing taxpayer burden, not asking of any additional capital outlay from you, but using your existing budget, your existing spend throughout your buildings to operate them to create energy savings that fund the upgrades and improvements to both buildings and experience. In turn, we'll be your long-term facility and financial partner. We're going to help you with a long-term capital improvement planning. So beyond the project, you'll have a tool for long-term financial and capital planning. And guaranteed improvement, operation, and savings in dollars. Whit's going to share with you details to how we find those savings and what we do with them.
Good evening. So as Chrissy mentioned, how do we get to these savings that can be reinvested back into the facilities or back into other educational programs? We do that through improving the infrastructure in the school buildings themselves. So where it's not already been done, we look at LED lighting technology, which is just a much better lighting quality as well as consumes a lot less energy than your traditional fluorescent or other lighting technologies that are out there now. Building automation systems, these are the computers that run these buildings. Computers need updating from time to time, so we want to make sure that the buildings are operating as they're intended as most efficiently as possible. Other things like mechanical, indoor air quality, all of these things that can help drive that cost savings in these buildings, and even things like renewable technologies like solar. Often our projects go beyond the buildings. We can look at things like school bus electrification, turf field conversion, because there is operational savings when you look at turf fields, track resurfacing. We've done bathroom conversions as well as enhanced with new playground equipment. So it can be pretty robust. So just some of the methodology and kind of what brought us here today. We have done some preliminary study on 3 of your schools, Christiansburg High, Christiansburg Middle, and Christiansburg Elementary. We gathered utility data. We benched that mark against some of your peer schools or other peer schools within the state. And we've come up with a feasibility that I'll share with you here on the next slide. So if you just look at these 3 schools, this was done back in 2020, so the data is a little old, but you can get the idea here. Out of the $500,000 that's being spent on utilities at those three schools, we could save about $127,000 through the infrastructure upgrades that I mentioned in the earlier slides. So what we do is we take that energy savings. There's oftentimes an operational savings component. If you replace equipment, you no longer have to then spend money to keep that equipment up and running. The analogy I like to use, if you have an old car you're putting money into, you buy a newer car that's more fuel efficient, you're also not having to put repairs into it. There's an operational savings component. We take that and we model that over a period of time, so you're able to use those dollars today, and then over 15 years or 10 years or whatever you choose the term to be, you would use those guaranteed savings to pay the program back, but you get the benefit, in this case, of $2.2 million to put back in your facilities today. So the hint is, we're within your budget lines already. We're just looking to reallocate the dollars that are going out to the utility companies to stay back here in the school district. So the big chunks that we look at, we don't look at staffing, we look at operational costs that are associated with older equipment, and we also look at the energy piece of the pie. So with a big district like this, you've got several $1 million that are being spent every year in utilities. Let's reduce that, keep that back here in the district. Chrissy mentioned that our programs help to support your long-term capital planning. The next step that we'd like to move into with Montgomery County Schools is to perform a technical audit at all of your schools. This audit is going to give us real data, firm fixed pricing on what we plan to do, and then we co-author with the team and then present back to you what a program would look like. You'll see down here the capital exposure. This is a sample. This is not representative of Montgomery County Public Schools. This is just a sample. But it gives the team data to make decisions about what should we do, what should we address, and it really helps support your long-term capital improvement program. So our program, we hope to address some of the more critical needs, and then items that we categorize that don't fit into our project, the school district will have that information to be able to support your long-term capital plan. So it's a lot of information that's provided. Any questions on what I presented on any of the technical information or aspect of our program?
When you, excuse me, when you provide the cost savings, do you also provide the cost of the equipment that takes to change that over a period of time?
That's right.
So even though sometimes it does help if the savings of what you've got to spend into getting that new product doesn't outweigh what you're saving. So you will also include that.
So what's provided is going to be firm fixed pricing to replace, whatever solution we come up with. So if it's, lighting, it'll be by school. So every school will have a cost to replace lighting. Every school would have a cost to replace HVAC where it's needed, or any other item that we identify. So they'll have firm fixed pricing as well as savings. So then we calculate a simple payback. So the division can make a decision whether or not that would make sense to fall into this program or not. Does that answer your question?
Kinda. I mean, I guess what I'm saying is I'm just going to use a roundabout number. If your savings is $150,000 a year on HVAC, but it costs you $100,000 to do, then your basic savings is $50,000 a year. So are you going to give figures that are kind of like that, or oh well, if you stretch that over 10 years, this is what your savings is, because that makes it a little harder to.
Savings is calculated annually, but then you can determine how long you want to carry that term.
Gotcha.
So we guarantee those in Virginia. Under the legislative code, we're allowed to guarantee savings up to 20 years. Most school divisions use 15 years, but you get to determine your term.
Do you also have savings programs where, how do I say, like, I'm sure you've been in Walmart or Lowe's or wherever where the lights will go off and on. Do you share things like that? Not that I want lights to go off during the day with students there. I'm not saying that. Nobody quote me at that. But I'm just something similar to that factor, to where it's not always replacing equipment or having that extra cost into it. Do you have programs like that as well that?
So the building automation system that we mentioned, your biggest consumers of energy in a building are going to be your HVAC, which is your heating and cooling, as well as lighting.
Right.
Okay. So students have to be comfortable, so we have to condition spaces. But when students aren't in the building, we want to make sure that building automation system is setting that and you already have controls in place. You're probably doing a lot of this right now. But there are other things that can be done, like analytics, things that can not just drive alerts if there's a problem, but they can look for competing heating and cooling situations. So we look at all that technology with lighting. Lighting controls is also a big component of it. So we look at lighting controls, occupancy sensors, all of those type of solutions.
Okay, board, we'll go around and give folks a chance to ask some questions if you have them. And I'll just kind of go around here randomly. Ms. Pardon? Dr. Guidry? Ms. Rousseau? Okay. Dr. Roundtree?
Nothing at this time. Thank you.
Okay. Ms. Franklin?
So thank you for the presentation. Good information. I'm not sure, was this brought to the board as something that the board wanted to investigate moving into something like this?
I don't know. As far as I know, I wasn't given that directive. But what the thought was that this is something I have some familiarity with, and just to piggyback on Ms. Bond's question, if all of our lights are fluorescent, right, and they generate so much electricity and luminescence and all that, and it costs us, I'm going to make up a number, $200,000 a year to light all our schools. The idea would be if we went to all LEDs, it's going to cost us $100,000 to light them. But to replace all those things, there's a cost, right? So that cost would be $80,000 per year if we finance it over 15 years. So our total spend on electricity would be a little bit of a savings, right? A little less than it was, but we would have all new, more efficient technology, whether that's lighting or HVAC, that we don't cost anything. So, you know, I had the contact to run into these fine people at a conference or something and ask, hey, take a look at our schools. What do you think? And when we started the conversation, I said, well, why don't we bring that in front of the school board and get their idea if they think it's something worth pursuing? Because I do think we spend anywhere between $3 and $4 million a year on utilities, that's something I think we could do more efficiently. And if we did it more efficiently and we're able to get new capital infrastructure, whether that's some HVAC or lighting, is like you said, the low-hanging fruit is the LED lighting. It might be worth looking into. This is just informational. You know, we'll get that information and bring it back to y'all. But I do think at some point, and correct me if I'm wrong, if we get an investment grade type audit, you come back and say, we guarantee, because we checked out all your systems, you would save $500,000 a year, that we wouldn't be able to move forward unless that was guaranteed if we made these changes. Is that correct?
That's correct. Has to be guaranteed and bonded in accordance with state code.
Okay.
Well, and just to speak to the LED, I mean, I just did that in my business, and it's amazing, the change of light. So I was speaking more of something larger on the scale. I mean, I know even changing out lighting can be quite costly. That is something that you can't have too much light. But I was meaning more on the larger infrastructures that you were talking about is, you know, where I was coming from on that, not so much the lighting aspect. But
And you're absolutely right. Larger scale, larger the impact, larger the savings. Absolutely.
because frankly speaking, sometimes it sounds great, but the cost that's affiliated with the change sometimes doesn't always win. So it's a bigger picture when you're looking at the higher end kind of.
And you would have all that, part of the reason we do that technical audit is to give you that information, because you need information to be able to build that, we call it a co-authored project. We're your engineering partner. We put together the technical information, but ultimately you build the project that makes most sense for you.
Do you, and again, frankly speaking, do you also share in that cost, your cost affiliated with that? Okay.
So ABM is the general prime contractor. So everything is very transparent. We come to you with firm fixed pricing, just like a contractor that would come to your home and build a deck. Their profit overhead is built into those costs. So it's just a one-time payment. The savings, there are no shared savings programs. So by code, we have to guarantee an annual savings amount. If you overachieve, so in other words, the systems overperform, you get to keep all that extra benefit. ABM does not share in any sort of shared savings program. If they do not perform, that's where the contractual guarantee comes in, and ABM has to come in and make it right and also pay the shortfall for any savings that are not achieved.
Ms. Franklin, still have questions?
Yes. So my point is, typically when we want to look into something like this, because at one time we did have a company for several years that came in and managed our energy and stuff, but not at the depth that you all were talking, that would come to the board to ask if the board wanted the administration to look into this. And then there would be RFPs that go out to be able to compare services for the money and for the level of management that would be happening within the school district. So I'm not sure where this process is right now, because it sounds like you all have already gone into some of our schools, or was that just looking at data?
That was just very preliminary.
To give an idea, kind of proof of concept of what it would look
Right.
like, which is why only 3 buildings were selected. But yes, it was just to give an idea and a window into what it could be, and that's why it was done in 2020.
Okay.
And this is, Ms. Franklin, just informational. There's no commitment, and if the board chooses to go forward, this is just to talk about it, just to get the information out there on the possibilities. If the board so directs us to move forward and explore different things, whether that's an RFP or how we want to do that, totally open to it. There's no commitment here. This is just information.
I do have a question, and Dr. Bragan, it might be more your to you than to our guests. So that the data in your assessment is a little old. You did it in 2020. You're looking at 2019 and 2018, and I know that energy costs have really spiked in this area. I don't think it's unique to us, but that's been a burden for people here. Is the school division also kind of shouldering that particular burden?
Yeah, any increased energy costs, right, come to us, and as we all know, the more we spend on facilities and the things you have to do, right, the electricity, the gas, the electric, the water, is less we have to spend on education and resources and teachers and supplies. So in this budget alone, we've increased our utility spend for next year up to $500,000 to reflect those increased costs that our current budget, we overexpend what the actual spend is for utilities. So, you know, the more you spend on electricity, obviously any types of savings, it would have a greater effect in moving forward. I think it's something to look into. That's why I thought we'd share, get some information. If the majority of the board doesn't think it is, we won't waste any more time, but that's why we're here.
I had a couple questions. I didn't know that this was even a thing, so I definitely appreciate y'all being here tonight presenting. You talked about an audit in order to kind of get a better understanding of what might be possible. Is there a cost associated with that audit?
There is a cost with the audit. If we were to look at all the schools, it's just about $39,000 to do the full audit. Now, the audit fee gets rolled into the actual project, so we don't expect the school division to write ABM a check for that. However, if the school division decided they did not want to move forward, then we would be reimbursed for the engineering effort that was put forward. Okay. But again, the whole process is very transparent. You know, the document that we put in front of you explains what we're going to do, the costs associated with it, and then that fee will be rolled into a project if a project is selected to move forward with.
Okay. And as a part of the presentation of the different savings areas, you mentioned bathroom conversions. I was curious what that looked like in general.
Typically, they're mostly water conservation, but we have been asked by other customers when we're in there doing work to the bathrooms that we've done changes to stalls and replace urinals with commodes and all sorts of different things. I mean, every this is just a small snapshot of customers we work with throughout Virginia. Everyone has a unique story and different needs, and these programs are very tailored. So really, the code allows a lot of infrastructure that can be done within our programs.
All under the energy savings hood.
Right.
It's all about energy efficiency for you as a path forward to creating some of these savings that fund these improvements.
Okay. Great, thank you. Board, any more questions? We've gone around once, so just open it up to anybody else.
So I want to be real clear. My concern is not with doing something that's going to save us money, okay? It is with the process and the way things are brought to the board and how we as a school district make sure we're doing procurement in the right way.
Understood.
Dr. Roundtree, did you have anything else? I can't see your face to know.
No, I don't have anything else. Thanks. Good presentation.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Next up, Ms. Weinbarger from the New River Community Services will share a presentation with us that describes their partnership with MCPS in providing mental health supports to students and families. This is just a presentation, no action expected.
Good evening. Thank you for having me here tonight. Just wanted to share a little bit of information based on the fact that MCPS is providing some funding for 9 additional positions within our agency, particularly serving Montgomery County students. A little bit of history about our partnership. Started back in the 1990s, began with the Safe and Drug-Free Schools Act, where we did some after-school groups, transitioned into some in-school groups for mental health services and substance use services. Developed in around 2010, developed into some school-wide programming where we served all students. It was sort of a universal service for all students. Any student could access it. It was classroom prevention work with some more targeted one-on-one services, but it was more school-wide at that point. Throughout the years, it has turned into a more clinical service, targeted services for students with mental health diagnoses. I say all of that because if you are aware of Governor Youngkin's Right Help, Right Now plan surrounding mental health in the Commonwealth, there's a huge push for mental health services in the school system, funding going towards mental health services in the school system. Montgomery County Public Schools is ahead of the game. We currently have CSBs and school systems across the state who reach out to us on a pretty regular basis asking for information on how we developed our partnership and how we got to where we are now. So it's pretty impressive work that I think the school system and our agency have partnered together on to collaborate and develop throughout the years that I'm really proud of. I provided just a quick overview of the services that we provide in the school system. We have 3 different services current as of this year. We have school-based case management, which is master's or bachelor's level staff, all qualified mental health professionals. They carry a minimum of 24 individual cases on their caseloads. It's a monthly service, but it's based on client need. We definitely triage those clients. Some clients get seen once a week, some get seen once a month. We intentionally bill case management for those students so that it's a broad service and allows us to do more. We're allowed to do transportation, we do home visits, we do community visits. We help link those clients and families up to medical providers, dental providers. We link the families up with food resources, housing resources, any needs they have. Because we're billing case management, we are able to meet those needs for those families. A key piece of case management is really collaboration and communication. And again, I talked about the transportation piece, which is a huge benefit for a lot of our families. For case management, there is no funding restrictions. We can bill Medicaid. Medicaid is the only insurance that will pay for case management services. CSBs are the only entity that can bill Medicaid for that service, so it's a huge advantage for us. We do have a sliding fee scale for families that do not have insurance or do not have Medicaid, and we are able to waive fees altogether for families. And we have some grant and community funds that we can utilize as well. We also have therapeutic day treatment. That is the most desired service by schools usually. It's bachelor's level staff who are also qualified mental health professionals. Those staff have a minimum of 4 clients per staff. They do daily interventions multiple times throughout the day. Those are your students who have typically more discipline issues throughout the day. We're really working with those students to teach them skills to be more successful in the school setting, also in the home and community settings. It includes a weekly parent contact. We work on crisis situations, psychoeducation, coaching, and behavior management in the moment. There are really strict insurance requirements to qualify for TDT. It is something that we can only really fund through Medicaid or FAPT community funds. Those insurance requirements have really pared down which agencies provide TDT now. Because it's so hard to get those services approved by insurance, a lot of agencies locally have decided not to provide TDT services any longer. COVID had a huge impact on our TDT services. At the time COVID hit, we had about 30 staff in the school systems that we had to move into other positions because when school shut down, you can only bill TDT when you're in school. It is only a school-based service, and so COVID really impacted us. School-based outpatient is our newest service in the school. It is only provided by licensed or license-eligible staff. It is scheduled sessions. It is much like outpatient in a clinic where you would go and you'd have an hour session in a clinic-based setting, and there's not really anything that happens in between those sessions. For our students in the school system, they are getting either weekly or bi-weekly sessions, which is pretty unheard of actually for outpatient. There's a clinical focus, and again, it's only office-based, so there's not the transportation or the services that happen in between those sessions. Those services really are intended for clients who are motivated to make change, to work on their mental health, and are really invested in the services. It's our newest service. We just started last school year. We have a grant that funds one of the positions through the Department of Behavioral Health Services that Montgomery County Schools partnered with us on. And it is also a service that we can bill any funding source, so private insurance, Medicaid, and then again, we can take the families without insurance or other funding sources and do a reduced fee or a fee waiver. A little bit of data about the services that we're currently providing. So for school-based case management, we currently have 26.5 case managers just in Montgomery County Schools. All schools have at least one case manager. Some have up to 3 case managers per school. We are currently, as of February, had serve an average of 601 clients in Montgomery County Schools just for case management alone. Therapeutic day treatment, we currently have 9 TDT staff plus 1 vacant TDT position. 4 of those positions in TDT are the positions funded by Montgomery County Schools this year. That 1 vacancy is included in those 4 positions. Currently serving 46 clients through TDT. 21 of those clients are served under the 4 positions that fall under the 4 that Montgomery County is funding. For school-based outpatient, we currently have 5 outpatient clinicians, again, plus 1 vacancy. 4 of those positions are funded by Montgomery County Schools. Currently serving, as of February, 174 clients, and 89 of those were falling under those 4 MCPS funded positions. This chart just breaks down the number of staff that we have in each school. So as you can see, every staff has at least someone in their building every day, some up to 3, like I mentioned. The outpatient positions are all split. So all 5 of our outpatient clinicians are split amongst 2 or 3 schools at a minimum. So they spend at least a day, sometimes 2 to 3 days in each school, but they have multiple schools that they cover. And then I've indicated which schools are covered by MCPS. Just a little bit more to add to what we do as a part of our partnership. There's a supervisor connected to each staff. We provide weekly supervision in the schools. Being in the schools also allows us to collaborate with school administrators and counselors on a regular basis. We do crisis response for our school systems that we cover, so individual student crisis, school-wide crisis, or community crisis. Anytime we're asked to come out and assist, we're going to show up and be available to help out however we can. We provide trainings and consultation to staff, students, as requested. We provide summer supports, so all of our services are year-round services, so when school's not in, we are still seeing our students. We maintain our services through the summer. For our TDT kids, which is, again, our most intensive school-based service, we do a summer TDT camp for them that is 6 weeks long, takes them out in the community, keeps them in a structured daytime activity, and allows them to continue to work on the skills that they're developing throughout the school year. And then we act as a point of contact for agency-wide needs or referrals. So often students are getting services or need services through something outside of the school system, and we act as the point of contact and the liaison to get kids connected to other services within the agency as needed. It's not on this list, but we also provide substance use and alcohol services for students who violate school policy when requested to do so. And I just wanted to add a couple of benefits to the 5 positions specifically provided by MCPS. I mentioned that 4 of those are outpatient clinicians, 4 are TDT staff. The 9th position is a supervisor for those positions to provide the weekly supervision that is required for the staff that are licensed or license eligible. Some of the benefits, outpatient has offered a new clinical service to our continuum of supports provided in the schools. We found that with mental health needs increasing with our youth, there's been a real need for targeted clinical services, and I think outpatient's been able to meet that need. We've reduced some barriers to accessing services such as transportation limitations, avoiding waiting lists for outpatient services, and allowing students to get the services where they are without having to miss educational time for as long as they would if they were having to be transported to a local clinic. It allows for weekly sessions, as I mentioned. It's pretty unheard of that outpatient provides weekly sessions, and we've been able to do that when requested by school systems. It allows for more options for those with limited income and financial barriers. There's no current fee at all for any of the students receiving services under those 5 positions provided by MCPS. And so there's no copay through their insurance company, and there's no pay through NRVCS. Again, as I mentioned, there's less time out of the school building to access the services as needed. And being able to increase the number of staff that we have in the schools has assisted us in transitioning students when they move from school to school, and so their services can move with them. We have had some statements and reports from school administrators and school counselors, and even from parents, that they've seen an improvement in their students' behaviors with the additional services, so that's been really good to hear. That's it.
Board, any questions? Anybody want to start?
I have one. So what determines the number of case managers per building?
It's really based on need. So we've been in the schools for a long time. The need keeps growing. Schools are constantly requesting more and more, and we're trying to meet that need, but it's really based off of the students that we can serve and sustain long term. So, we know that it takes about 24 case management clients to sustain a full-time case manager. We need to be able to show and have indicators that we can sustain that position at that number of students who would receive the service ongoing to be able to keep that staff member. Does that answer your question?
Yes, and it's unfortunate that that's a growing number.
Yes, It is definitely growing.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I'll go around. Ms. Purcell, any questions?
Sure, this is really just a little clarification.
Sure.
So, where you had the data about how many clients you're serving, and that's unique clients. It's not, and there's no overlap between the day treatment and school-based.
So it is true that therapeutic day treatment is unique in that they have to have a less intensive service to qualify for TDT per insurance requirements. So all students who receive TDT are going to have a less intensive service. It could mean that they have school-based case management. It could mean they have school-based outpatient. It could mean they have a private provider in the community. So all TDT students are going to be a duplication, quite honestly. But the 601 is not a duplication. I will say the school-based outpatient, the 89 that we're serving, the 174 that we're serving, I don't know how many of those are duplicated. The 89 that are specifically funded through those MCPS funded positions, 58 of those have no other services, and so those are brand new clients.
Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.
Dr. Roundtree, any questions?
Yeah, first a comment, just thank you for the service to the community and for presentation, bringing awareness to mental health and also destigmatizing mental health care. The 601 clients served, is that for the month of February as a whole, or is that through February for this year?
That was the month of February. That's how many we served.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
That was my only question for the presentation.
Okay, thanks. Ms. Bone? Ms. Pardon?
Yes, so thank you guys again. I'm going to echo Dr. Roundtree. for everything you're doing for our schools and our community. Much needed. I've been an advocate for this since I started, so I know how important this is, and it is to me as well. And I also want to thank our governor for making this a priority. He saw the need and he stepped up, so I really want to thank him for that and what he's doing there. So I do have a question. The current 5 positions under MCPS, since the need is growing, if we were to need more of you, would there be more? And is there any way that maybe anything through the school or maybe outside in the community where people could possibly get some type of aid if they're having trouble with payment or funding
Yeah,
of
so
that
I will
nature?
say, I think that's one of the hard things is we do have a financial process that if families do not have Medicaid, especially for services like case management that are really only Medicaid funded, they do have to provide their financial information to us to get to that reduced fee. Quite honestly, some families aren't comfortable doing that. And so that's where we come into, we can do the fee waivers. We do have some, local CSA dollars that will pay for services. That's quite a process. Takes some time to get to it. We have some mental health initiative funds that come through the local governments that we can utilize. And so we do have some local funds and aid that we can use. And quite honestly, we're going to waive any fee for any student who needs services that can't afford it.
But we, as community members, could also try to get organizations or businesses to try to see this need and maybe possibly, do you all take donations or accept any kind of funding that way?
I don't know that I can answer that question. I don't think we do because of our status as a business and an agency. But that's probably beyond what I can answer. Okay.
Thank
I
you.
like the idea, though.
I do too, because I think there would be several that would help in that cause. So.
Well, and I will say the 9 additional positions funded by Montgomery County has been super helpful. Our plan is to sustain those positions next year. They will not dissolve. We will keep them within Montgomery County schools at no cost to the school system. We try our best when we get a request to create a new position to fund it. It just takes us a while to get there because we need to ensure that we can sustain it long term. That's also our staff's livelihoods and jobs and careers, and we want to take that into
And that makes total sense. So thank you for everything you're doing.
Thank you.
Dr. Guitry.
Thank you for the presentation. So I just have a couple of questions, maybe several. First is, so you're in buildings, you're with students, and you're working very closely. Are we meeting the needs of MCPS students in this area? Like, is this staffing, I think this, just to expand on the question you just got, is the staffing sufficient in our buildings to meet current needs? And I'm asking that kind of, we're going to get a presentation here about discipline, and a whole lot of our students who are being disciplined have IEPs and 504s. And so it seems to me that there's a gap. And I'd like for you to speak to that possible gap if you can.
Yeah, I can try to. I think one of the things that we also struggle with is the differentiation between discipline and mental health, and figuring out where we intervene and where we can be helpful and where it might be a discipline issue that is more in the school's purview. Now, I think they go hand in hand often. Are you meeting the needs? I think you're meeting them the best you can currently. There's always going to be additional needs that can be met. And certainly I think this is going to be a growing trend. I think there's some creative ways to do things differently that certainly I have, regular meetings at the school board level where we're talking about the issues and needs that arise, and constantly talking about additional services and gaps in services that exist. But it becomes tricky when we're limited in what we can bill through insurance companies.
Right.
And so I think if you're thinking about those discipline areas, TDT is really what's going to be most beneficial for those students, because it is that all-day service that's really about behavior modification. That's also the most difficult service to get approved for billing purposes for students. And so that's the challenge that I think we all face.
Thank you. So I'm wondering, so do any of the clinicians serve on any IEP teams? Can you talk, because that's where it intersects the discipline in a number of these cases. with the services you're providing?
Yeah, so if we serve students, I don't know that we serve on necessarily as like a part of the IEP team, but if we are serving students who have an IEP or a 504 and we are invited to those meetings, we certainly try to attend them and advocate for the parents and with the parents and the child in the school to assist where we can.
Okay. And then just one other question. So there's an epidemic of vaping in our community.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of what you've spoken about, what you've talked about are services to individuals.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have thoughts of how the services you provide can assist the division with this epidemic that's affecting our own community?
Sure, it's something that we talk about at the school board level meetings a lot with the contacts that I have at the school board. We used to take referrals in our substance use and alcohol referral services for students who violate that policy. Quite honestly, it became so overwhelming that it was impacting our ability to do the other services that we needed to do to address the mental health. And so we had to back up from doing the vaping referrals specifically just because of the number of those. I will say there are some online programs for vaping. There are some evidence-based programs for vaping, and we certainly have we have a community and wellness outreach team that previously was known as prevention, who does like classroom prevention, that I think could be an option for implementing back into the school systems. There hasn't been such a push for that lately. I don't know that that's been really in the school systems for the past 10 years or so, but I know that in my discussions with some of the other school districts, that's back on the table for like vaping education for elementary school students to get that education out there and the awareness.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you.
Good. I had two questions. One of them you already answered, which is good, was what happened when those MCPS funded positions, when the funding went away. But definitely good to hear that y'all will be able to maintain those. And I guess kind of a recast of one of Dr. Guitry's questions. So in terms of the number of case managers, TDT, and clinicians you have, are those numbers where they are because the caseload is as much as we have, or if you had more staff, either one, able to fund more staff, and two, able to hire these vacancies, would there be more cases, right? More students?
If we provide it, they always show up. So it's never been the case that we've provided a staff and they weren't full almost immediately. That is the reality of the situation. It's pretty rare that we have to pull somebody out because they're not getting the referrals. So we often say if you put them in there, they're going to fill them up.
Right.
You know, you mentioned one of the challenges is hiring right now. Hiring and being a CSB, it's hard to compete with private providers, and so that's one of the things we're really focused on improving as an agency, is our benefits and salary and compensation, and so that we can attract more providers to provide more services.
Great. I figured that was going to be the answer, but I'm hearing it out loud anyway. So
Yeah, I mean, you know, speaking of just the 9 MCPS funded positions, we have yet to have all 9 of those full at the same time since the funding started. So we've gotten to 8, but we've never gotten to 9 at the same time. So.
Okay, great. Board, any more questions?
Yes. So you said you had 26.5 case managers, 1 to 3 per building, but then with your slide with the schools, there's some with 0.5.
Yeah, so like Kips and Margaret Beeks, that staff member is split between those 2 schools. So there's someone who's there at least part-time throughout the week, but is split between those 2 schools. So there's a specific person identified, but not there full-time.
Okay, so is that because there's just not enough managers?
It's because of we don't have as many referrals from those smaller schools.
Okay, thank you.
Board, any more questions? Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. Next up is the grant proposal for a school nutrition program equipment grant. Do I have a motion to approve the grant proposal, school nutrition program equipment grant?
So moved.
Second.
A motion by Dr. Guthrie and a second by Ms. Franklin. Board, any discussion?
I would just like to applaud our nutrition folks for going out and creating free meals for our students and just being so innovative in how we can better serve our students and save money with equipment, because those are big expenses. So really appreciate the work going on there.
Any other comments? Dr. Roundtree, you good?
Good, thanks.
Okay, great. Ms. Osborne, please call the roll.
Ms. Bond,
Yes.
Ms. Franklin,
Yes.
Dr. Guthrie,
Yes.
Martin,
Yes.
Ms. Purcell,
Yes.
Dr. Roundtree,
Yes.
Mr. Hudson.
Yes.
7 in favor.
Motion carries. Next up, do I have a motion to approve the grant proposal upgrading equipment and expanding pathways in unmanned aircraft systems?
So moved.
Second.
I think that was a motion by Ms. Purcell and a second by Dr. Guthrie. Any discussion, board? I'd like to say I'm super excited about this one. You know, the drone program has been such a great program in the schools that we have it, and I'm super excited to see it spread out into other schools as well. So it's very exciting. All right, Ms. Osborne, please call the roll.
Ms. Bond,
Yes.
Ms. Franklin,
Yes.
Dr. Guthrie,
Yes.
Ms. Parton,
Yes.
Ms. Purcell,
Yes.
Dr. Roundtree,
Yes.
Mr. Hudson.
Yes.
7 in favor.
Motion carries. Next up, do I have a motion to approve the grant proposal Early Childhood Provisionally Licensed Teacher Incentive?
Second.
Motion by Ms. Franklin and a second by Ms. Purcell. Any discussion? Okay, great. Ms. Osborne, please call the roll.
Ms. Bond,
Yes.
Ms. Franklin,
Yes.
Dr. Guthrie,
Yes.
Ms. Parton,
Yes.
Ms. Purcell,
Yes.
Dr. Roundtree,
Yes.
Mr. Hudson.
Yes.
7 in favor.
Motion carries. All right, next up, Mr. Dante Harris, our Director of Facilities, will share a presentation with us regarding a water testing update. No action is expected, just informational.
Good evening, Board Chair, members of the Board, Dr. Bregan. Tonight, I will be presenting the water testing results for both Montgomery Central and the Operations Center. This past December, water testing was conducted where one sample was taken at 10 locations at Montgomery Central and at 10 locations at the Operations Center, four locations at Montgomery Central for both lead and copper. One sample was also taken at 4 locations at the Operations Center and 2 locations at Montgomery Central for iron. You can see the results that we have for lead. We only had 1 location that was over the action limit. That was at a location near the custodial equipment maintenance shop. That location has been tagged out. We also went on and conducted a third-party testing for all of the lead and copper, and we had the same results in terms of the parameters that we did. And we had 1 location again that was the OPC B2D3 is located near the custodial maintenance shop. That was tagged out as well. We had another location, which is MC41, that was in the classroom at Montgomery Central, that's been tagged out. And we had another location that was for iron that was tagged out as well. Our next steps. Can't get this in here. There you go. Next steps we're going to contact an industrial hygienist and an A&E firm to help us with the lines at both locations to be able to see how we can be able to address the situation in order to try to remediate the issue as best way as possible. Anybody got any questions?
So is this unusual? Sorry.
Okay, go.
Is this unusual for things just to show up in certain areas? Could it have been a repair situation that caused them, or what?
No. In the situation in Montgomery Central, that faucet is at the end of the line. And usually you have a situation where you got sediment that's falling out in the pipe that flush all the way to the end. We call that like a dead leg. And then you have an issue with the line. So realistically, you want the water to kind of keep moving. So when you get all the way to the end, you can potentially have a problem. So we think that that's why we want to try to get someone to look at to maybe see if we might replace the line because the building is so old. So then that way we won't have many issues in trying to be able to go forward is what we want to try to be able to address.
So that would be replacing all the lines.
The main line in the building, yes.
Thank you.
Go around. Dr. Roundtree, any questions?
Yes, so are the lines in the building accessible or are they embedded in the walls?
I think in Montgomery Central, most of the lines are not real accessible. We have to get someone to be able to get in there to remediate some stuff because it might have like asbestos and stuff like that.
Okay. And so this would not just be a termination of the lines or removing the outlet that is contaminated. It's actually changing the whole line, as I understood the comment, correct?
Can you repeat that? I just want to make sure that I'm answering the question correctly.
So it's not just eliminating the outlet that tested positive and terminating it, it's replacing the whole line.
Correct. We trying to replace the whole line. Yes, that's correct.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, great. Ms. Purcell, any questions? Okay. Ms. Vaughn?
Okay, so I'm just trying to think because I've got a building right down the street. So, so I'm thinking that a lot of the line comes off of the main line. So, and sometimes with the main line, it gets like you said, the sediment breaking up.
Mm-hmm.
So would we just try to replace the copper that's coming into the building, or would we try to replace what's actually coming off the main vein of
the
water
the
outlet
line
itself?
coming into the building? Because from what I've been told, the service line coming up to the building has been replaced by the city.
Okay.
And so we're
exactly.
replacing once it terminates into the building.
Right.
We're
So it's
replacing
just-
the line.
Gotcha. So it would just be the internal
Internal.
part, which does make it a little bit better. So,
Yes.
yeah.
It'd be the internal part, yes.
Ms. Pardon?
Mm-hmm.
Dr. Guthrie?
Yeah, I just have a couple of questions. So I see here that it's over the action limit. I mean, how significantly over is it? Do you have numbers or can?
Yeah. You know the number, Philip? $32 parts per billion.
What's it? I'm sorry, I didn't.
32 parts per billion.
Okay. And is it below that, but present in the other testing sites in the building? There were a total of the 4 that you did, and it was 1 that was over.
The one that was over, correct.
How about the other 3?
They were under.
They were
Under
comfortably
the action
under?
limit. They were all under the action limit. The other 3 were under the action limit.
Uh-huh. I'm just trying to get a better sense of how significant the problem is in the building.
Well, like she asked the question about the faucet being at the end and the sediment coming down there. Pretty much that's what you're seeing. We're seeing that the sediment is flowed all the way pretty much to the end of the line, and that is pretty much a terminating spot. So that's why usually you don't have a higher concentration right there. In any plumbing system, you don't want to have a dead leg, and that's just going to collect all of the stuff down there at that line. So,
Mm-hmm. And so in the classroom, are they I know in the operations center when there was a problem that when you turned off one of the taps that there was water that was provided, bottled water. I mean, is there a problem with students in that classroom? I mean, is there anything that we need to be worried about?
The faucet has been tagged out of service, so no one should be able to use that faucet. And all the other faucets should be okay.
Okay.
And I guess the one caveat to that about the testing is that testing is like a snapshot. It's not necessarily an absolute. So you can come back later and test and still have a problem with that faucet. It doesn't mean it is necessarily going to be an absolute, like you're free and clear of any issue. It's that you want to do like maintenance by flushing the system and all of that in order to make sure that you're trying to get any contaminants out of the line.
So are you going to increase the frequency at which you're testing the building?
We are in the process of updating our policy and procedures in order to be able to address things a little bit more effectively. Because right now, we didn't necessarily have the systems covered to where it's that once we remediated something, we were tracking everything by going back and testing more frequently so that we can make sure that we're doing things a little bit more safer. Is what we're trying to be able to increase. So yes, we will increase our frequency so that way we'll know exactly if there's a problem a little bit quicker. We're not waiting.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Just one of the things, Dr. Getchu, I know Mr. Harris and I have talked about this, is that we want to get a long-range plan to test all of our facilities on a regular basis, and I know that you all are working on that, and we didn't want to muddy the two presentations today, but we will have a follow-up presentation with what our plan is moving forward.
The one question
Well,
I had.
All right,
Oh, nope.
I was just gonna say, and two, that building's old.
Yeah.
Because it was like in the 30s, right? I mean, so those water lines they're old. It's not. I don't think we would have that same problem, even though it's nothing wrong with testing our other facilities. I'm just saying I don't think we'd find as much of a problem because this is I mean, the lines are just very, very. They're old.
Yes,
Old.
they're very old.
You know, I think you said this, but I just want to clarify. So, all the different ones that you noted that have been tagged out of service, are they all faucets? Are any of them water fountains or anything?
Faucets. That should be all faucets. Yes.
Okay. Okay. Okay, great.
Okay, so when you tag out the faucet that's at the end of the line, where everything collects, and you kind of answered my question when you talked about making sure things were being flushed. But the next one, do things collect in that one until you fix the problem? Because now it's the dead end.
That one's at the end. So if you just take like a pipe being linear, and this faucet is at the very end of that line. So once we then tagged out that line, in a sense, all the stuff is still just flowing down there. It's just not coming out of that faucet because you still got all the water moving from earlier on in the pipe coming down, and then it's just terminating at this spot down here.
Okay, so if it's just terminating there, that means the settlement's going with it, right?
In theory, if you could say if it built up over time, that it would be like at the end, then start to flow back.
Right.
Yes, but that would probably, I don't know how long that it would be able to take to get to that point. But yes, you could say you would have collection of sediment that would then start to back up. Yes.
But we're gonna be checking things before we get to that situation.
Well, hopefully we want to be able to get the line replaced, so then we don't have to worry about that because we know that the line is a galvanized pipe, and so you could have connections that have lead in it, and then that's what's leaking out into the system. The EPA, they give out these guidelines for lead in the water. You know, the action limit used to be 20, went to 10, and they tell you that no lead is safe for any children in the water. So it's like part of the maintenance program is to try to keep flushing the line so you don't have stuff just sitting there. That's part of like when you get a boil order when they say the water company comes out and replace a pipe. Well, they're doing that because once you lose pressure in the line, that sediment falls down, and that's why you boil in the water. And so through time, once you put the pressure back in and start flowing and getting the contaminants out, it's the same thing. So.
Okay, thank you.
No problem.
You board, any more questions?
I have a question. Mr. Harris, you mentioned kind of one of the hurdles to replacing the line is getting into the wall where you might be disturbing some asbestos. So do you kind of have any sense of the scope or disruption or kind of maybe cascading issues that might come from something like that?
Not at this time. We are in the process of getting everything kind of scoped out so we can understand exactly what's going on, which is why we're consulting industrial hygienists and then an A&E firm to be able to help to design the system so that way we can get it replaced. And then that will cover all any abatement issues and anything like that to make sure we don't have any contaminants flowing around in the building, because that's a strong EPA issue to make sure you don't have any of those contaminants flowing around.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Board, anything else? Okay, great. Thank you so much.
No problem.
Okay, board, next up, Mr. David Dickinson, Administrator of Social Studies, will present to the school board a comprehensive overview of our school's initiatives and teacher activities in celebration of Black History Month.
Good evening, everyone, members of the board, Dr. Bregan. I'm Dave Dickinson. I'm the Administrator of Social Studies, and February was Black History Month. It's a great time for schools to celebrate and honor the many achievements and contributions made by African Americans to the economic, cultural, and political development of America. And as you probably know, since 1976, every American president has designated February as Black History Month and endorsed a specific theme. This year's theme is African Americans in the Arts, and the theme is infused with African, Caribbean, and Black American lived experiences. So rather than, as in the past, recounting a very long list of lessons, activities, and projects and special guests that were in our schools, I am happy to share with you a bird's eye view of our schools' initiatives and teacher activities in celebration of Black History Month. We took a different approach this year, and we visited almost all of the schools in the county to talk with students and teachers in hopes of capturing the experience of our students in a video firsthand. And we hope you enjoy watching this as much as we enjoyed getting out and putting it together. But I do want to, before you see it, just to thank Andrew Webb, who definitely was the skill behind putting the video together. So I don't know if he's here tonight, but thanks, Andrew.
Why is it important that we will learn Black history?
Because Black children have trouble with being comfortable with themselves. And I feel like teaching people about Black history and great things lets them feel an appreciation for being Black.
My name is Salem Poor, and I was born into slavery in 1747 in Andover, Massachusetts.
African Americans come in all shapes and all sizes, and that there are many educated Black people here in the community, here in the world, that they don't really get exposed to. So the more exposure, the better off that our students will become to be able to handle the world in which we currently live in.
We learn about Black history all year round, but during the month of February, we can really take our time and learn about the people that helped form America.
Did a lot for our world, and they helped us out, and they did a lot for us.
Yes, good morning, Christiansburg Primary School.
I think it's so important to honor Black history because, especially in our school, because it's so prevalent in our area with Christiansburg Institute and everything we have going on in our community around that. And our school has done a great job. Like I learned about Christiansburg Institute when I was young, and just Black history overall. This class that I'm in has done a great job about teaching me American Black history, and it's just been a really good experience.
We want to celebrate Black History Month because if we forget the history about how amazing people who aren't just as one color, we'll all fall apart. We'll go back to the 1800s, and we can't have that. It's just not how we can move forward and climb the hill to the best world we can possibly be.
I think we celebrate Black History Month because they weren't celebrated back then, so why can't we celebrate now if they didn't celebrate them back then?
I think Black History Month is important to be celebrated because it's an honor to those who have struggled before and who have changed the world through what they have done through their arts and culture.
So we
read this story about her, and
About Harriet Tubman.
yeah, and her parents were really mean to her.
It's not really just February. You can really celebrate it any time. You know, in your house, you know, in your car, any time of the day, any time of the year, any time of the day. It's not really just February.
Today's Black History Month figure of the day is Booker T. Washington. Booker T. Washington was born a slave and deprived of any early education.
Any questions?
Thank you, very cute.
So it is really reassuring that that list that we normally get, that there are things going on, and that our students understand the importance of it. So it's always nice to hear that directly from our students. So is the month designated per year by the president, or or is that just what Montgomery County did? Who are we going to honor, or what area?
Well, February is designated nationally, and then our governor also, recognizes the date, and then we recognize that date on our calendar that is made available to us, and at the beginning of the year is one of the dates that we will recognize.
Right, like, I guess I didn't phrase this right. So it was arts and culture, I think, was what was celebrated this year?
Yes. So in a lot of what you saw wasn't happening in social studies classrooms. It was across all subjects, and we were in art classes, English classes, and they were studying different artists and writers who, maybe it wasn't obvious in the video, but we tried to stick with the theme.
So who makes the determination of the theme? There we go.
And I'm not exactly sure of the organization, but the first two sentences of what I read to you was right from when they designate the theme, and I can't remember who it is right off the top of my head. Okay. But I'll let you know, and I'll send you that detailed list that you like to see as well. I can share that with you.
Okay, thank you.
Board, any more comments? Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, next up, Adam Simpson and Steve Sidemore will present information on student discipline data from 2021 through 2024.
Good evening, board members and Dr. Bregan. We are here to present to you a updated report on student behavior and discipline throughout MCPS. This serves as an update to our presentation last board meeting. And so we wanted to provide some more in-depth data, some analysis, and next steps for you. So here's an overview of our presentation. We're going to start with communicating the purpose, what we're here for, and what we're going to speak with you about. We're going to give an overview of the supports that we provide to students in order to prevent behaviors in our schools. We're going to also look at a bunch of data from a variety of different perspectives, much of which you have requested, and we want to dig into that data and talk about that together, give you an analysis, and end with some conclusions and recommendations for next steps.
This presentation addresses three areas. The first, current MCPS practices. Second, current MCPS data and trends. Third, next steps for MCPS. And our goal is to understand what is going well, what can we improve on, and how can we be more consistent and be more equitable. The MCPS strategic plan guides our daily practices to support all students in meeting their goals.
This slide specifically outlines 3 goals in our strategic plan in the equity section related to behavior management. And so the strategic plan was put in place in 2021, so we've been working towards these goals, and we meet every year to update our progress towards those. So the first one is to analyze discipline data and identify interventions to address disproportionality, to revise the existing discipline policies and practices and align them with model policies by the VDOE, and to utilize the PBIS model across all of our schools. There is a link to the plan, and more action steps related to each goal are provided on page 25. And so we did want to start with support. How do we support students in our schools? And the answer to that is in a wide variety of ways. Our teachers, our counselors, our administrators every day are supporting kids. From the moment they get there to the moment they leave, and beyond that, to be honest. And so it all starts in the classroom, right? And Tier 1, effective, engaging Tier 1 instruction is really the most supportive thing that we can do for students. And so through that, our teachers set clear expectations and routines. We've been working this year specifically on improving engagement levels in our classes. If kids are engaged in their learning, then they're less likely to act out. So we've really been having to focus on that this year. We give students multiple opportunities to respond. We provide scaffolding, opportunities for them to correct their errors when they give incorrect responses, and organize our physical environment in a way that helps them feel safe and able to learn. We also have other school-wide systems in place through the PBIS process. We build relationships. We monitor the building through duty schedules, and teachers and administrators play an active role with that. We provide tutoring after school and other clubs and extracurriculars for them to get involved and get connected to school. Our schools, all of our schools have data teams that meet monthly and sometimes even weekly to look at attendance, behavior, academic data, and those teams really aim to focus on the whole child and what every kid needs. And then outside of Tier 1, we have a variety of higher level supports at the Tier 2 and Tier 3 level. We have SAP teams, our school counselors, obviously. Ms. Weinberger shared a lot about what NRVCS provides our students, and we have other programs and resources available, and Mr. Sizemore is going to talk more about that.
In MCPS, we use multi-tiered systems of supports. School teams support students with data to provide differentiation for academic, behavioral, social, emotional success. We use PBIS, which is Positive Behavioral Interventions and Supports. It is an evidence-based tiered framework that all schools use to support students. Tier 1 is the entire school. We have a matrix, and the rules are established by a team. There's expectations set. We have lesson plans and talk to what it looks like, those expectations. Tier 2, about 10% of the school would need more specific interventions, and it's a response to what happens in the school. And Tier 3 is around 5% needing more substantial interventions. This slide is just access to the resources and guidance we give to administration and MCPS. We want to provide consistent guidance for common occurrences and plans to build relationships with students and families that are impacted by discipline decisions.
All right, so we wanted to, the next several slides, dive into the data from a variety of different perspectives. Just to give an overview, looks at some longitudinal analysis, historically, some cases going back to 2018. We have a few slides that compare us to local divisions around us and across the state. And then in your packets that you have, there's a school-by-school analysis that disaggregates the data for the past 3 years across student groups. And so that is provided as well. So we're going to look at ISS and OSS rates, like I said, by school and by student group over the past 3 years. We're going to look at common behaviors that show up at different levels and in our different student groups. So we want to examine the trends that we see. Anytime we look at data, we want to see patterns. And then we want to analyze the supports that we talked about. How effective are they being? So this slide was actually included in last board presentation. We've updated with a projected number. This represents the number of students that received 1 day of out-of-school suspension. And so that projects it for the end of the year. One point I wanted to make here is Mr. Sizemore referenced the tiered triangle where we reach different percentages of students. And so research tells us that 80 to 85% are reached by Tier 1 and so on. And so by nature of that model, we are kind of in that ballpark. The past 3 years, we're suspending around 5% of our students, which means, of course, we're not suspending 95% of our students. So we did want to share that, our supports are working for a large chunk of our students, but of course, there are students still in need that we're not being successful with in this area, and we need to examine how to improve. but that does fit the model that we talked about earlier. So this slide looks at total incidents. So as we go, I'll try to provide context for each slide because we're looking at it through different angles. So this in particular looks at any incident that's entered into PowerSchool, regardless of what the outcome would be. So this could be very minor infractions all the way up to our most major. So the consequence could be a warning, a phone call home, a conference, all the way up to an out-of-school suspension. So you can see the trends. Obviously, during the pandemic, that number dipped way low, and you can see where we have been for the past 3 years and how we project with our current number and how we project to the end of the year. This looks at, you see that total incident count, but then you also see the different types of consequences laid out over the past 3 school years, or 4, I suppose, through ISS, OSS, long-term suspension, and expulsion. And again, that bottom line for the current year is how we project we would finish out the year. Okay, this slide has a lot of information on it, but it obviously is going all the way back to 2018, and it's the top 5 behaviors that are showing up, most common behavior codes that are showing up at the elementary, middle, and high school levels. If you notice, starting in the row where we've made a note, the 2021-22 school year, the codes change. The state changed how they defined certain behavior codes. So you can see a change in the language, which was reflected partially in the strategic plan notes because we wanted to, the state, and we wanted to adopt their guidance to more clearly define what behavior it was. Some of the old codes were very generic and general. This slide is most common behaviors across all grade levels, K through 12, over the past 3 years. And of course, on both slides, the number in parentheses is the number of occurrences that they showed up. You see interfering with learning in the classroom is number 1. Okay, we also broke down the top 5 behaviors by ethnicity. And so this first slide, again, is referencing any and all behaviors, regardless of the outcome. So you can see the trends and the comparison between student groups there. And then the next slide is the same information, but only behaviors that resulted in an out-of-school suspension. So you can see what students were suspended for in each student group. And this data, the last 2 slides, were really just for the current school year. Okay, the next 2 slides just give somewhat of a comparison to provide context for it's comparing us to other school divisions. So the top chart here is looking at, obviously, school divisions who are close by in Giles, Floyd, Roanoke County, and Pulaski. The comparison there is total incidents. And so we divided incidents by students, and so we get 0.38 incidents per student. And you can see how we compare to the other schools. And the bottom chart, some are local, but that is related to school divisions who are roughly around 10,000 students like we are, and how we compare to them. All right, this slide, I will do my best to explain here. There's a lot of information on this slide. So obviously you see MCPS, you have Virginia in the top right, and then other school divisions. So this is a 3-year trend. This information was readily available on the VDOE because it's part of the school quality profiles. And so what is represented here is a difference between this percentage of student enrollment and the percentage at the rate at which those students were suspended. And so, for example, in the 2021 school year, white students made up about roughly 80% of the student population, and 92% of our suspensions were of white students, so it's a plus 12 there. And in last year, our black students, we had around 5% of our population and 12%, I'm kind of rounding here, but 4.5 to 12.1. So the difference there of 7.6 higher than the enrollment. So the color coding was just really, I kind of picked some numbers to give some guidelines. So between 5 and 10% is yellow, and anything above a 10% difference is highlighted in red. So just to provide some context and comparison. Okay, so here on this slide, each of those links takes you to the school-specific data, but the packet that we've provided for you contains all that information. So it's school by school, it's 3-year data, it looks at ISS rates, OSS rates, and also the most common behaviors that led to those ISS and OSS assignments per building, if that makes sense. And then the top link, all MCPS schools, aggregates all of that, and there's a link to Montgomery Central as well. All right, so this is a lot of information, so we just wanted, there's a lot of conclusions that could be drawn and takeaways, so we just wanted to provide a few brief takeaways. So the first is that overall, in-school suspensions are projected to decrease starting at 1,787 in 2018 down to 1,381 by the end of the school year, which is less than the 2-year running average. We're also seeing a projected decrease in out-of-school suspension as well, from 1,581 down to 1,114. We highlighted this at our last presentation. We definitely do see the trends that we've discussed previously with the disproportionality. So with our black students accounting for 4.2% of the population, 11.1% of students who are suspended this year are black, and 12.8% of all suspensions are of black students, which is, when you compare that to the 4.2% is disproportionate. Then you have students with disabilities, and the data down there also speaks to that, 13.8% of the population, and the suspensions at a 32.2 and 37.7% rate. Elementary.
For our elementary schools, overall, we see an ISS, OSS increase across all schools. Student groups disproportionately represented are students with disability and black students.
All right, at the middle school level, we see some numbers going up, some going down. So ISS rates are decreasing in 2 middle schools while they're increasing in the other 2. Out-of-school rates are decreasing in 3 middle schools and increasing in another. All middle schools are suspending students with disabilities at a higher rate than their peers. 3 out of 4 middle schools are disproportionately suspending black students. 1 out of 4 middle schools is disproportionately suspending multiracial students, and 1 out of 4 is disproportionately suspending Hispanic students. And you can see the common behavioral issues that are leading to those suspensions below. We have the same high school data here, so you can see the increasing and decreasing rates of ISS and the disproportionalities that exist with different groups, as well as the common behavioral issues that have led to those ISS and OSS assignments.
The key questions we would like to look at and try to explore further are: what are the underlying root causes that have led to the trends in this data? Why are students of color and students with disabilities being suspended at a higher rate? And why are efforts not being as successful as hoped? We want to look at relationships and relationship building, consistency and implementation in staff, monitoring and accountability, and continued focus on mental health.
So this quote has come up quite a bit in my time working with PBIS and tiered systems. And so it's to refocus to remember that we're dealing with kids who are not exhibiting a skill that we want to see. So when kids don't know how to read, or they don't know how to swim or multiply or drive, what do? We teach them the necessary skills. We meet them where they are, and we teach them what they need to be successful the next time. So do we have that same approach when they don't meet our behavioral expectations? Are we teaching them? Are we punishing them? Are we doing a combination of the two that holds them accountable, but also making sure that we are teaching the skills needed? And so we usually use this quote as a focus for our teams and to think about our approach to behavior as it plays out every day.
Our recommendations in the school and school practices: improve discipline goals, that are based on school needs, incorporate them in our CSEP, strengthen multi-tiered supports for all schools. For professional development, build upon previous professional development addressing division needs. And importantly, not most importantly, but importantly, division supports quarterly monitoring reports delivered to school board, MCPS strategic plan team review and respond to division-wide data, and gather input from all stakeholders with a focus on how we can serve our community better.
So as we look at next steps, we want to have a focus on accountability for school data. So all the reports that are disaggregated and shared, we're definitely going to share that with the school teams. We expect that our principals and leadership teams look carefully at that data, what it means for their building. Some of the trends are very different when you look at the schools, and so making sure that that we are holding them accountable for having those real conversations. We already have a practice of doing summer data team meetings, so we're making sure we're going to incorporate this in that. And as Mr. Sizemore said, developing goals for next year for what we want to see. So academic attendance goals, and we want to make sure we have a focus on behavioral goals next year. We're working on, along with Mr. Gerritsen, the implementation of a proposed K through 12 social emotional learning curriculum designed to teach kids about behaviors proactively, how to be self-aware, how to manage themselves, how to avoid making decisions at school that will get them in trouble in the first place. We want to provide ongoing PD for administrators. We have some plans to do that this summer, to look at restorative practices, cultural proficiency, alternatives to suspension, and having monthly data reviews on a consistent basis, looking at this data in real time so that we can make timely decisions and interventions. One thing we've been talking about recently at the division level is making sure we're integrated with the other departments, that we're not operating in silos. So collaborating with equity and diversity, collaborating with special education, along with the C&I department to make sure anything that we present to teachers is looking through our lenses so that we're meeting the needs of all students. And finally, and I think really importantly, making sure we're listening to students. What is causing that? Listening to hear what's causing the behavior. Why are you acting out in this way? How can we help you? What do you need? And intervening in real ways that have a direct impact on them specifically. So I know that's a lot of information. Please let us know if we can answer any questions.
School board, any questions? Who wants to start?
I'll start. So when a student with an IEP has a discipline issue, at what point does the IEP team come together to discuss modifications of the IEP for that student? And what severity of action causes that team to come together, and how many repetitions of more minor actions cause that team to come together to readdress the IEP?
It's a good question. So there are certain, I'll try to answer that in maybe several parts. So there's mandatory intervention at any time a student accrues 10 days of in-school or out-of-school detention. We have to have an MDR meeting, manifestation determination review, to determine if the student's disability resulted in the behavior. But we also track students before they get to that 10 number, so that, say, a student had 3 suspensions, all short-term. So they're not at the 10 days yet, but there's a pattern in that behavior, and if they're suspended for the same thing 3 times, we can go ahead and intervene then, and possibly have an MDR at that point. But also, the case manager should be monitoring that as well. And so they look, really IEP team meeting can be called at any time. So individually, when a student is referred to the office and the administrator has to discipline a student, really you're looking at the facts at hand and determining, one of the slides earlier talked about a level decision matrix. So what's the behavior, what tier does it fall in, what are some appropriate consequences that we have kind of at our disposal at that point. Involving the IEP team is definitely important, and we want to make sure that we are involving them. Administrators frequently communicate with case managers when suspensions do happen to, number one, keep them informed, but also if they need to call an IEP meeting. So it's really an as needed. There are certain times where we have to, by law, have an MDR, but certainly we want to be more proactive than that. Dr. Walker, you can chime in if I'm missing anything.
Okay, we'll go around. Dr. Guitry, any questions?
Yeah, I have a few questions. So I have to say, thank you for putting in the effort to present us with some more data and information. I appreciate that. I'm curious as to why, when you went on the slide where you talk about the district-wide trends, the overview, the students with disabilities, why you didn't include students who had 504s?
We certainly could do that.
Right, because a lot of those students would have disabilities, correct?
Correct. So when we talk about students, so that number specifically is referencing students with IEPs. So I suppose the reason we chose that is because that disproportionate number is the largest and what stuck out to us. But certainly if you look through the packet, you can see that students with 504s are also suspended at a higher rate.
Right. So if you add the two together, there's a larger discrepancy still. So even if when I saw that, I was like, well, it might be in relation to historic trends. But did the historic trends include 504s? Because there's quite a few students. I think out of our total population, it's 6%. But if you look at the number of out-of-school suspensions or number of cases, that's almost 16%. And so you're slicing the data so that it doesn't look quite as bad as the data, if you dive into it, looks. So I just want to ask, like, one of the things that I found alarming was some of these percentages with students with disabilities. So for instance, if you look at the Blacksburg Strand elementary schools, 83% of the numbers of out-of-school suspensions by student groups are students who have either IEPs or 504s. So when I looked at some of this data, I was very unsettled by it. And we heard a case tonight from a parent that further alarmed me. Was what she was saying was, I want to make sure that I heard correctly what she said, that there was a 10-day out-of-school suspension, but then there was a request that the students stay out of school for an additional period of time for the administration to have an IEP meeting. Was that?
I would just caution the board and the administrator to discuss a specific situation in public. We could
Okay.
talk about that privately.
Okay. So you have the pyramid, and at the top was the functional behavioral assessment. That's one of the things you would do. So it seems to me in a lot of these cases that you would flip that triangle underneath, because that's one of the things, the earlier interventions you could do. So one of the things I'm curious about, I know we're going to talk about special ed in a future meeting. How many functional behavioral assessments or changes to IEPs happened after a disciplinary action? Do we know how much? Because that's one of the things you're supposed to do if there's a disciplinary action. So I know the manifestation determination review has to happen at certain points.
Right.
But a functional behavioral assessment is something you would do earlier on. So in these cases, how often is that happening?
I don't have that number for you. We could pull that information for you. Functional behavior assessment could be completed for any student, whether they have an IEP or not. I would say it definitely tends to be a higher level intervention. You know, there are certainly steps that schools do to intervene before it gets to that point. FBA usually comes in when you notice a concerning pattern of behaviors and you really want to dig into what's causing that behavior. So I did not have that number. We could find that number for you, as far as how many.
Yeah, okay. I have a couple other questions, but I'll pass it off. Thank you.
Thanks. Ms. Barton?
Thank you guys so much. This is incredible. I was like, when I saw it. This is a lot of information. I know it took a lot of time, and you guys did this in a very, very fast time. So thank you for all your hard work on this. This is amazing for us to see it laid out so we can kind of see what we had and what we're looking at and what might be coming down the road. I did have a couple of things. Are any of these categories that are possibly listed, would it be to where a student could possibly be double counted? Do you know what I mean when I say that? You know, like
Yes,
would
ma'am.
one person fit into two categories as far as number count wise? And are we
Okay.
looking at that in a different way, or how is that being
So
interpreted?
specifically, you're referencing the packet?
Yes.
And across the row?
Right.
Okay, so the only place students would be double counted is by the ethnicity group, and then also if they have an IEP.
Okay.
Correct. So if you count up, hoping my math is right here. If you add up the rows, it should all total the all column.
Okay.
Not the students with disabilities column, because obviously their ethnicity would be there and their identification, but the ethnicity row should add up to the total.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. It might make it a little harder for us to know for sure if the discipline issue would be technically ethnic or fall into a different category if there's some overlap there, unless we have some more details, I'm assuming, to go along with that possibly.
So, sure, so you're saying, like, for example,
Far
we're
as, like
talking
you said,
about
with
a Hispanic
ethnicity
student
and
that does have a
IEP.
disability or a
Mm,
Hispanic
right.
student who does.
Right.
Right.
Okay. Okay. And this one is not so much on the data, it's more on what we're providing for our employees. So I know this is becoming more and more of an issue, and it has been, unfortunately, which has put a lot of stress and burden on our teachers and our counselors and our administration overall. Are we providing them with training tools and things that, you know, they need to handle these situations? Some of these situations, they've either really never had to handle, or with it becoming more prevalent, I just want to make sure that we're giving them what they need and the training possibly that they need to make this maybe not as stressful for the student and for the employee.
Yes, ma'am. We do provide training, the CPI training that the staff gets, but it is something we need to expand upon. We need more professional development with the interaction before the result. So how do we build that relationship, notice the signs, and then intervene proactively? So we're looking at giving more support there starting in the summer and continuing to build with what we have.
Okay, that sounds great. Thank you. And I had more of a comment than I did a question. So I hate seeing this trend where it's going, and there's a lot of underlying reasons as to why it's going that way. But a comment I do want to make, and I might be frowned upon possibly for making this comment, but I'm going to say it anyway. Most of the time, discipline starts at home. We need help from our families and our parents. We will try to do the best we can with discipline, and I know there's a need and we have to, but at the same time, we need our parents to meet us halfway. We can't do this by ourselves. So we need parents to step up and be parents and try to help us with this issue, because if we don't, we're never going to fix it.
And to that end, we need to build strong relationships from the school to the home.
Absolutely.
So that we can be a team.
Yes, and I'm going to hit on communication again, and my favorite topic. But I want to make sure that we're making that bridge there, so there's no frustration on their side and there's no frustration on our side. And I know that's a lot to ask and a lot to do, but until we have that connection, I don't really see this problem getting better, because it's not fair to put it all on us, and then at the same time, it's probably not all fair for us to lay it at home either. But we've got to have that median to where we're helping each other. And I think it could be successful.
I totally agree with the communication piece. Just speaking, reflecting on my experience as an administrator, when you have had multiple conversations, positive, proactive conversations with a family, and then you do have to address behavior, you do tend to get support from that family. Whereas some of the times where it's a difficult conversation is when that hasn't happened, and they feel, well, why has no one called me before this?
What
So I
what
agree.
can we do in that aspect to try to better that relation, or try to make them, you know, see what they need from us, what we can do to help as much as possible. thank you guys again. It was wonderful.
Ms. Vaughn?
Yeah, I'm gonna ditto what Ms. Parton said. I know it's not the popular thing, but, you know, I'm a believer, and I hope we push forward on looking at the phones problem with our students, and I hope we, as a board, decide to do something about that, because I think that's a lot of the issue. I understand frustration. I understand that, you know, a lot of our students' home life isn't always the best, and I understand that, but top of the list is tobacco and vaping and reckless behavior and you know, just profane and vulgar language and things like that. That's got to stop. And truly, parents, we've got to do better than this. I mean, we have got to understand that we are our children's best advocates, but when they are wrong, we have to step up and say, you know, we can't treat people this way. We can't allow these things to happen in our schools, because it causes someone else. That's one of the reasons we're having a teacher shortage, one of the reasons we can't get coaches, one of the reasons we can't get a lot of that kind of stuff, because not only are they having to deal with students, but parents as well, and we know that. So we got to get hold, and I don't know if cracking down on it, because I know what drugs and vaping can cause. Anger and addiction can cause frustration, and addiction can cause you to lash out and hurt the very ones that you love the most without meaning to, and we know that. So these aren't questions, but it talks about discipline, and we've got a problem, and we've had a problem, and, you know, is out-of-school suspension less because we're just trying to find somewhere to make do to keep them to where we're not doing out-of-school suspension? And I guess I'm more speaking on secondary education than I am elementary, but we got to do something. And communication is the key, even if it's when we do our first of the year presentations, this is what we expect. And I think we've talked about that as a board. And again, I understand it's not always great out there in home lives and you know, bus situations and classroom situations, but we still have to learn how to conduct ourselves. And we've got to do better. Got to do better.
Ms. Rousseau?
I have a couple of questions. I'm trying to figure out which one to prioritize. So we had a presentation earlier this month. I was just looking it up, and I thought it was earlier this year, but it was really just earlier this month about student discipline from the attorney, and something that she explained was the trigger of that pattern analysis, which I think you were speaking to, Mr. Simpson, earlier, and that I guess officially it's more than 10 days of suspension that would like trigger the pattern analysis, which then might result in the manifest determination review. But just for my clarification, something that you're advocating for is doing this even earlier, so that we're not waiting until kind of these big, heavy disciplinary processes to even look at the patterns and the triggers of them. The other thing that I have just been kind of focused on I'm looking at page number 14, 2018 to 2024, most common behavior codes. And I'm really just running on ANIC data, but I feel like the reports of tobacco and vaping looks like it would be low. So I don't know, just based on information from teachers, from from students. But again, kind of like where is there discipline happening that's not really being reported, or not like a way to maybe manage the full scope of an issue?
Sure. So I think what you're saying is, so where high school is showing up 72 times, this year in 21, 22, 131 times, but in some cases it's down lower. Keep in mind that on this slide in particular, this is everything, right? This is minor all the way up to major. It's not just suspendable offenses. So you're going to get a lot of things that are entered as teacher referrals. The large majority, especially on this slide, these behaviors are going to be entered by teachers and what they're seeing in the classroom. So I'm not saying it hasn't happened, but usually students would not be vaping in the classroom to where a teacher would enter that. A lot of times that's administrators intervening and putting that into the system, if that makes sense. And those would result in ISS or OSS. And so with the counts the way they are on this slide in particular, interfering with learning in the classroom, 242, those are those daily disruptions to learning. So maybe that's why it's not showing up there in particular. I know that it is showing up like on the breakouts in the middle and high schools. It showed up quite a bit, depending on the year and the school. So it anecdotally to me, it looks accurate, and there definitely should not be instances of vaping that are not reported in Power School. They all should be in there.
Thank you.
Ms. Franklin?
So let's try to go back to the beginning when you were talking about data teams that meet every month. So I don't understand, if we have a team that's meeting every month looking at data, they could not see what's going on to the point that we end up where we're at now, or quite frankly, continue to be at.
They meet, but I think we need to do a better job at disaggregating the data to show the student groups and show how they're being impacted and intervene earlier.
Okay, so my response to that would be, this has been the trend for decades, and we say we're working to stop the disparity, but yet we're not looking at the data that shows the disparity to create the plan to stop it. That's very concerning to me. So when we talk about the infractions from students, the information that I see here, where some of it is new, it doesn't show exactly how many students in each of our student groups were suspended for each one of those things. So you could have a black student for interfering with learning who was going out the building, and a white student who's not. So I'd like to see the breakdown on who's going out for what, because this doesn't tell me that. I'm very happy to see the breakdown on students, especially students with disabilities, and how that plays out across the county, because these are things that I've been hearing from folks for years. And as far as discipline overall, yeah, we've got a problem. But we've got a problem that's been buried inside of this forever, and that's the disparities for our students, and it's the same disparities. The only thing that's different is that multiracial students are now counted as a group of students by themselves, and it shows they're getting treated just as poorly as the students who were identified in their groups before. I just don't understand this. I do not, especially when we supposedly have things in place. When we're talking about behaviors, that's not just the students' behaviors we need to be looking at. We've done development around implicit biases and just out and out biases of all different kinds. But when our students are saying, this is what happened, but again, they're not possibly being listened to because this is what the adult said in the situation. And there could be things that are happening with the adult that heightens things with certain students. That's got to be identified and addressed. And we have the data that shows it. So I don't understand why we continue to have the same data and it gets worse. I don't understand that. Our students with disabilities, nobody wants to talk about how we do not serve those students to the best of our ability. And we've got to start having that conversation because we are doing the students, their families, and this community a disservice by not making sure we're serving our students the best we can. But I'm just very, very frustrated, angry, disappointed. I can't use enough to tell my frustration of this over and over and over again. And we keep saying we're going to do better, but the numbers don't show it. They don't show it, and it's time for things to change. And I'm going to say this for 25 years. Okay, I'm tired of saying it. I want something to change.
I want to give our student reps an opportunity to chime in as well if they have any thoughts.
Oh yeah, I just had a little question. So, one of the problems I've heard of is that, well, it was during public address, that elementary schools don't actually have an ISS option, but then in the slides I saw it mention elementary school having ISS data.
In an effort to keep better data, if a principal or a teacher removes a student from a room for less than half a day or more than half a day, we count it as ISS, but we don't have an ISS room, no.
Oh, okay, that classifies as ISS. Makes sense, thank you.
Okay. I guess I had one statement and then I guess a question, but kind of piggybacking on something that Ms. Purcell said, like when I look at the numbers, there's two ways that you could look at some of the disparities, right? Either our IEP students, our Black students are being over-disciplined, or everybody else is being under-disciplined, right? So, like what I hear so much from the schools, from students, from parents, from teachers is like stuff is happening in their classrooms and nothing's being done about it, right? Which speaks to some of these issues, like whether it's vaping or threatening language or fights. I mean, I've heard about all that stuff in the past week, right? And like what I'm hearing frustrations about is just like things aren't being done about it. So that's kind of my statement. But I guess my question would be, as to help me understand this process and maybe any other folks in the community who might be listening, like walk me through when a student gets sent to the principal for some kind of discipline thing, right? Whether it's, being caught vaping, using threatening language, like what is the decision process that happens in order to make some decisions about what's happening with that student?
Sure, that's a great question. And it does speak a little bit to what Ms. Franklin was saying earlier. We have to provide students due process. I'm speaking of my direct experience at Blacksburg High School, but also now as a director talking to and learning what's happening in other secondary schools. But directly with discipline, we always listen to the student side of the story. There are definitely situations where we've had to address a teacher to say, hey, this is what the student said. Did you hear it from their side of the story? I can tell you anecdotally that definitely happens. Is it happening enough to, change the numbers? I can't answer how many. That's hard to measure, right? But that certainly does happen. So we give due process. We listen to the student first, usually, which, depending on how that goes, we usually have to follow up with the teacher and say, okay, here's what the student said. Tell me more. But these are some guidance documents that are countywide that are available. There's leveled responses. So teachers, what's not on this slide is that there's also, it says administrative managed responses to student behaviors. There's also a teacher managed as well. And so that's usually a document that goes over, its principal goes over in August, right, at the first faculty meeting to say, here are things that could happen in your classroom. Here's our expectation about classroom management, how we would expect you to handle that in your classroom before it becomes an office referral. So this slide speaks to the process that administrators go through. And what those documents will show is that within the levels, there's a pretty wide menu of potential consequences that could be given. And I think, this presentation is very heavily ISS OSS. That does not mean that there's not other consequences given. There are a lot of others that are given. And so there's two sides of this story, because sometimes it's a conversation with the student where you reteach them the behavior and to remind them of the expectation. They go to class the next day, and sometimes the response is, well, nothing happened to that student. And so that's a communication piece between the administrator and the teacher to say, here's what happened. So it's case by case. I think these documents speak to, we moved away from if X, then Y. Every time a kid is referred for this offense, we always do this. That's not how we approach it. We listen to the full context of the situation, take a lot of things into account. Is it a pattern? Does that student have a disciplinary record that we're noticing a pattern? Is it a one-off thing that happened, right? There's a lot of questions that administrators do their best to seek what the root is, get to the bottom of it, and assign an appropriate consequence. And not just consequences, but also any interventions that would be beneficial. Does that student get referred to the SAP team? Do they follow up with a school counselor? Again, these are definitely things that are happening on a regular basis. Is it happening perfectly? Probably not. Can we improve? Always.
You kind of touched on that, on the communication issue there. I think that could help. Certainly not, you can't communicate back to all the families what's happening, but at least the teachers ought to have some awareness of what's happening with the students coming back into their classrooms. I think Dr.
I would maybe just disagree slightly. I would say that, we want to do both, but we really need to communicate with the families. The students refer to the office, we need to tell the parents what's happening.
Sure.
Sometimes maybe we don't always follow up with the teacher. We try to, right? But I would say we definitely need to if it's my student, my child that's referred to the office, we need to know about that.
Yes, I agree. I think Dr. Guthrie had some more questions.
Yeah. So just to help explain a little bit more why I focused on special ed. So I'm a faculty member and I have a disability, and so I'm particularly sensitive to this. And just to echo what Ms. Franklin said, I think that we are failing our special ed students abjectly. I'm thinking about some of the presentations we've got about test scores with students with disabilities. I'm looking at this data. But I just want to ask one very specific question, then a broader one. So for a student with a disability in an elementary school, and they're in the classroom, and you just said that there is no designated space for ISS, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. So if a student who has special ed, is on the spectrum, ADHD, has some sort of episode in the classroom, what happens to that student?
It would depend on the situation. Usually, the teacher would involve the administration and possibly the case manager for the student. If there's a counselor involved, they would come and help support too. We would do everything we could to support the student to re-enter the classroom that day.
Okay, so the interfering with learning in classroom, that could apply to a student with disability who has an episode in the classroom. Is that possible?
It's possible, but generally speaking, in general terms, it probably wouldn't happen like that. They would probably, a student with disability, and we can pull those numbers and situations, it would be more of a physical safety thing, not interfering with the instruction.
Yeah, I guess that definition, it would depend on what the behavior was. So when I read interfering with learning of others, it feels more intentional. Like I was disruptive. I was doing something that distracted the class. Like, I'm not sure totally what you're referencing. You said episode. Like, if it's something that's beyond the student's control, that would not typically result in a disciplinary referral.
Okay. I'm trying to understand why there are so many students with disabilities who are receiving in-school suspensions and out-of-school suspensions. I also have concerns that there's underreporting of disciplinary issues, not only because of the anecdotal information that we've received, but recently I haven't been able to verify this, but that it's possible that maybe some of the information that's being entered may be altered or removed because it may make schools or MCPS look bad. So I just would love to get assurance from you that there wouldn't be any pressure on schools to underreport disciplinary actions.
No, sir. Absolutely not. That we would consider that inappropriate for school to do that.
And we need the data for the PBIS team and for the data teams to function properly. We need to have that data because that's what they review locally in the building.
Okay, so that's definitely not happening in MCPS. You can assure me that.
I can assure you that the expectation is that that would not happen.
Okay. Great, thank you.
Board Chair, can I say a few words?
I'm sorry?
Can I say a few words, or
Of course,
should I
of
wait?
course.
I want to congratulate you guys for putting that data together and presenting tonight. We really appreciate the format and the way you shared it. And I know we could provide some more if we want to get to more specificity, which would be helpful. I know that we talked about that earlier. As a school superintendent, the data that we presented, and I think some board members have mentioned tonight, isn't surprising to us, right? We knew there's some concerns there. And in my 36 years of doing this in education, I've worked with a lot of kids with behavioral disabilities. I've worked with a lot of kids with special needs. A lot of kids came from different backgrounds, academically enriched and not. And I've yet to meet the child that didn't want to learn. I've not met that child yet, right? I've met children with a lot of difficulties and a lot of issues that prevent them from doing that. But what this data presents to me is that we're failing a percentage of our kids across a different number of groups of populations. And the child that is actively engaged, a part of the learning, a part of the school community, feels like school is a place where he wants to be, needs to be. His classroom is a safe, inviting environment where he can thrive and become always capable of becoming, typically doesn't act out. And the data we're seeing here is the end result when we don't do that. So we have a large task in front of us, and it's a multifaceted task that begins in preschool and kindergarten all the way through high school. And I feel the same frustration that some of you expressed, and I've only been here 15 months or so, right? Because as a school superintendent, when someone doesn't walk across that stage and I don't get to shake their hand for graduating, for whatever reason, their path went awry, that's my fault. I take personal ownership for that, because whatever we did or didn't do wasn't as successful enough to enable that child to graduate from our schools. We need to do better. And I'll say this public, I'll say it to the school board, hold me accountable. We need to do better. And unless we get to a place like they do when they land airports at the Roanoke/Blacksburg Airport, where 100% successfully land and everyone gets off the plane, we're failing. And one child is too many, right? And yet we accept the graduation rate of 95% and think that's pretty good. Well, that wouldn't be good enough in my house with my 3 daughters. Why is it good enough for the people of the county? So we have work to do, and I'm not afraid of rolling up my sleeves and working, but it's across every domain, it's across every area. It's going to involve all of us doing the heavy lift, and we need to move whatever we talk about, whatever group, from those kids, whatever that means. Kids with special needs, kids that are economically disadvantaged, to our kids. When everyone is our kid and the whole community embraces that esprit de corps and that sense of purpose, that's the only way we're going to move this needle. Otherwise, we're going to have the same data next year. So we're committed to it. I knew what the data was going to say. We're working behind the scenes across our teams to do it. And you got my commitment. There's a problem there that we need to get it done. And hold me accountable. I'm putting it out in public. You know, we have the same data year after year. You know, put me on 81 and send me north. Because we can do better, we will do better, and y'all got my commitment that I'm going to give it all I got. Thank you.
I know Dr. Roundtree had some more questions as well before we're done.
Yeah, so I two additional questions. The first one, in the post-COVID-19 pandemic world, are we seeing significant deficiencies in executive function with our elementary
Hey, Dr.
schools?
Roundtree, just 1 second. Can we get the audio up a little bit in the room? I don't think we could hear his question there. Try that again, Derek.
Okay. Yeah, so in the post-COVID-19 world, are we seeing significant differences elementary school students, and are we targeting the
Derek, you're breaking up. I'm sorry. Try that again.
Sounded like he said
sorry,
significant.
let me try one more time.
There you go.
So are we seeing significant deficiencies in executive function with our elementary school students? And are we looking to address those in the schools? Do we have plans to address those specifically with the COVID-19 pandemic? A lot of the students didn't have the early exposures to preschool and whatnot to develop those executive functions.
So the answer is yes. We're seeing more significant, more extreme. Our administrators are working hard to push through and teach as opposed to punish. And so the teachers are as well. They're working extremely hard. But that also speaks to NRVCS and the need for their counselors to help address some of that.
Okay. And then, so I was pushing last meeting on the in-school suspension versus out-of-school suspension in elementary schools. And I'm aware that in-school suspension in the elementary schools right now is difficult because a lot of times what an in-school suspension looks like in elementary school is the student is sitting in the administrative office, and the administrators are looking after them, trying to do their administrative duties as well. I would really like to see us move to having a ISS room in elementary schools and having on-call some substitutes that are available that have special education backgrounds that can be called on anytime that these IEP students that are having difficulties with their disabilities are able to come in, go into that ISS room, work with those students for the rest of that day. If it needs to be another day, another day. And the goal of that is to make it so that in 10 years from now, we've cut those discipline issues in high school IEP students in half, or 75 or a quarter. Because if we can get early intervention with the students, then they're going to like school, just as Dr. Bragan said, and they're going to feel like it's an environment for them to learn, and they're going to go into the world with success, rather than us suspending and then eventually leading to expulsions at times and kids dropping out of school. So I'd really like to see that we focus on that early education and keeping the kids in school. Sometimes they have to be taken out of the classroom for various reasons, but in-school suspension that is not a detriment to our administrators that are in the building is a positive thing for middle school and high school as well when those students get to those grades.
Your goal is our goal, and Dr. Bragan and Dr. Wickham have said that we can explore all options to reach that goal.
Right. All right. And again, reiterating some of my colleagues' statements. Thank you for the presentation. This was a great presentation, a lot of data for us to digest here. And I really appreciate Erner's quote that when a child doesn't behave, do we teach or do we punish?
Thank you.
Board, any more questions? Okay, great. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
All right. Next up is our school board norms and protocols. So at our school board retreat, of the school board spent some time kind of going through our norms and protocols, had some different conversations, some different ideas in some areas. So school board members, if you open up that doc, I'm sure you've looked at it. We tried to capture the changes that were proposed. Atash highlighted them all in yellow. This was a collaborative exercise because several folks kind of had some action items, and we tried to bring all that together, put it back together again for the first time in an updated norms and protocols doc. So wanted to give board members an opportunity to react to any of this new language, see if we have any comments or additional changes we want to make before we consider this up for a vote at our next meeting. Sure.
Thank you. One of the questions I had was on follow-up for violations. I know that you said you were going to talk to the lawyer to find out if it was more appropriate to have violations outlined in the school board policy and then reflected in the protocols, norms, and expectations, or vice versa. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I'll be honest, I forgot to ask that question. I did ask the question about whether or not we could, affect leadership, right? And we couldn't. Which was confirmed from other conversations that we had. Definitely what I pulled on this, I looked at a bunch of different norms and protocols from around the state. I know that Ms. Purcell had pointed me to some. There's a wide range of different kind of mixtures of this language in there. Some went further than this and talked about committee assignments, so taking away leadership positions from committees, which isn't something that we really do. Some were softer language, some were harsher language. So I kind of threw a dart at the wall here. It's something kind of middle of the road.
Okay. I'm assuming I didn't compare before the meeting this language with what's already in board policy. Is it consistent? I'm assuming that you looked at the board policy to make sure that it.
Yeah, the board policy didn't say much about this. Like it didn't really have escalation measures or anything like that. But
okay.
And what was here before definitely didn't say much at all. So
literally.
Yeah, right.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments from anyone?
So, still not sure if we came to a decision about adding information or to the agenda under new business, and how that would work if during the meeting something spurred us to say, this is something we need to talk about. Not for discussion that night, but to be added to the agenda, a future agenda.
Yeah, that was the question that I had as well. I thought at the retreat we agreed that new business would still be an opportunity to do that as things came up in the meeting, or sometimes it's advantageous to make a public statement about something that we know we want to get on a future agenda. But I didn't want to go edit the language that you guys had sent. So I wanted to see if that was an intentional decision or just an oversight.
No. So there were two things that we were tasked with addressing. One was how to get how to get something to you and during agenda prep and that process. And then the second thing, so some of the language was added by Dr. Roundtree. The first part was mine, was following Robert's rules and joining it with what is current board policy. So current board policy doesn't say you can't add to the meeting, it just discourages. So I wanted it to be consistent with current board policy and marrying it with Robert's rules. Now, this doesn't preclude at all, if something comes up in the meeting, to discuss it in new business. It just formalizes those two steps. One is if you have a request for something to be addressed at the meeting, to submit it for consideration, and if you can't put it on, and that's pulls in some of the language from other VSBA guidance. And then just the second is to marry board policy with Robert's rules in line with what we had talked about, which is that if you do, and Dr. Roundtree can speak to this, but one of the things that he wanted to see in the norms and protocols is the possibility of following Robert's rules to get 4 votes, majority vote, to have something discussed, even a preliminary fashion at that meeting. Because otherwise it's just pro forma at the beginning of the meeting to adopt the agenda if there's no discussion, if there's no ability to amend it. So this is consistent with Robert's rules, and because there were 2 things that we were asked to do with the language, and not to formalize what happens in new business. Does that help at all?
And again, I think just to be clear that the intention of new business was never to add agenda topics to the current meeting. It was just to give an opportunity for folks to say, in the future, ideally at the next meeting, if possible, this is something that we'd like to consider. So,
yeah, it does not foreclose a member at new business making a request then. It just allows between meetings for a school board member to make a request to put something on the agenda, to have it considered because I know that has happened, and there's no language, there hasn't been language for that, and how the chair should respond to the request.
Okay.
Yeah, just a couple points to add to that. So a board member can request to the chair, superintendent, and vice chair to have something put on the agenda. And if it is put on the agenda, then at the beginning of the next meeting, a motion can be had to take something off of the agenda so that the majority of the board has authority for the agenda. The same thing is true that if something's not put on the agenda, or if something comes up that they want to put on the agenda after board prep or after agenda prep, then there's a method for adding that item to the agenda during agenda adoption. So it works both ways. You can add something and you can take something off during that agenda approval process.
Yeah, that makes sense. So then I guess just to complete the thought, our norms and protocols now don't at all address the purpose of the new business or the unfinished portions of our agendas, but we, through practice and through agreement, are deciding that a new business would be an opportunity to bring stuff up for future meetings. Again, it's still in advance of agenda prep, so it's consistent with the norms and protocols that we're talking about here. And unfinished business, we talked about this at the board retreat, would be solely for the purpose of bringing up something from the previous meeting. I don't know if we want to formalize that in the norms and protocols. There's nothing in there about that, but I think as long as we follow that practice and the board chair enforces that, then I think we're fine. Any other comments about the norms and protocols? Okay, great. So if we're happy with them as is, we'll bring those up for vote at the next meeting so we can finalize these bad boys and put them back to bed. All right. Well, how about that? We're up to unfinished business. Are there Any items of unfinished business from our previous meeting that needs to be discussed? Okay, seeing none. Are there any items of new business that board members would like to have considered for a future agenda?
So this doesn't relate necessarily to our immediate past meeting, which is why I turned my mic on during new business. But I did want to ask, I know that Dr. Wickham is working very diligently on the textbook review, but if it would be possible to include 3 years of the benchmark data in that presentation to us or at another time that is deemed appropriate, just for additional information for us.
Okay, I'll note that and discuss with the administration when the time is appropriate for that. Okay. Board members, any other items to consider for new business?
I would like for us to seriously consider putting cell phone usage on our agenda. We talked about it, and we need to have a discussion on how we're going to follow through and what we're going to do, because I truly think we've got a problem. And I think that's part of the root of it. And I think a lot of our staff and teachers would agree, so.
We did speak about it at our last principals meeting, and there was support there as well. So they were going to get more information from the staff to come back. I thought that was my charge at the retreat, get you all more information on how we would look at that procedures, and then get the most updated feedback we can get from Christiansburg Middle School, who's implementing the policy at that point too. So yeah, if you want me to bring an update at the next meeting, is that fair? Or do you want to have a rough copy or something?
It doesn't have to be the next meeting. If we have too much on that agenda, it can be pushed out, but I would like to see it in the near future. And my counterparts over here want me to tag along dress code as well, because I think that's another problem that we need to send home letters about or something. So,
We did review that with the principals too, with the, well, not today, but with the warming days coming, that will be an issue for some of our schools. We do have the policy, we just have to enforce it and
right.
consistently.
That's right, and exactly.
All right. So I was going to say, if there was going to be new policy and administration and building administrators that talked about this, I don't want you to come and give us more information. Give us draft policies. And if it's just a matter of enforcing what we have, then we need to make sure that happens. But yeah, what I want to see is policy.
Understood, Ms. Franklin. I did think that was what my charge was, to come back with some rough ideas on what it should look like and get you all chop it up and then put it out there.
Correct, and I think I'm coming more for, like I said, we have the policy in place, so we need to just decide how we're going to communicate and how we're going to, definitely put it in place.
Agreed.
Okay, board, anything else? Anything else for new business? All right, announcements and information. Are there any announcements that any board members would like to share?
It's only 9:48. Yay!
We're not done yet.
Yeah, well, but I'm getting.
Dr. Roundtree, I just want to make sure that you're good. I can't see you.
Yep, I'm good. Thank you.
Great. Yes, sir. All right, upcoming school board meetings. You can see those in board docs. With the agenda prep that started on those. Up next, we'll go into closed session. Do I have a motion to enter into closed session as authorized by section 2.2-3711 of the Code of Virginia to discuss a personnel matter and a student matter?
Second.
A motion by Ms. Franklin and a second by Dr. Guitry. Any discussion? Ms. Osborne, please call the roll.
Ms. Bond?
Yes.
Ms. Franklin?
Yes.
Dr. Gibtree?
Yes.
Ms. Parton?
Yes.
Purcell?
Yes.
Dr. Roundtree?
Yes.
Mr. Hudson?
Yes.
7 in favor.
Motion carries. We're now in closed session.
We will come back out.